Good evening, everyone. I call to order this regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2013, and the time is 5:02 p.m. This evening, we have two representatives from Boy Scout Troop 441 who are with us this evening to obtain and earn their citizenship in the Community Merit Badge. It's Michael Rowe from All Saints Episcopal Day School and Danny Allen from Scottsdale's own Mojave Middle School, and I would like to invite them to please come up to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to our meeting this evening. If I could now please have a roll call, starting from my far right.
George Jackson,
Bonnie Sneed, Barbara Perleberg,
Eddie Brown,
Pam Kirby. Item 4 is the approval of the agenda. Do any board members have any changes to the agenda? If not, then do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Peterson, student and staff recognition and celebrations.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and everyone in attendance this evening. We have some great celebrations of Scottsdale School District and some of our students and teachers. First, our Arcadia Principal John Vieira is going to do a presentation for Aaron O'Malley.
Good evening, Board President, Ms. Kirby, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Peterson, Ms. Day. Certainly my honor to stand before you and to recognize one of the many outstanding students that we have at Arcadia High School. This time I'd like to invite Ms. Erin O'Malley and her teacher, Ms. Diana Cure, up to join me at the podium. Ms. O'Malley, Ms. Cure. Erin O'Malley, senior at Arcadia High School, was selected as the winner of the Arizona CTE Curriculum Consortium Logo Contest. There was more than 75 submissions from districts across the state. The logos were then sent to the voting team, who chose the top 3 logos, which went to a final vote. We're happy to have Erin O'Malley on hand to celebrate this accomplishment. The logo that she has with her was selected as the winner and will be the state logo for CTE Consortium across the state of Arizona. Very proud of her accomplishments. Erin is a 3rd-year graphics student at Arcadia High School. She plans to pursue a career in graphic design. We'd also like to pay special recognition to Ms. Cure, her graphic design teacher. Erin was presented with a certificate, a plaque, and a GoPro camera on October 31st at Arcadia High School. Along with all those accomplishments, Erin is also a committed national semifinalist student, as well as a member of the National Honor Society. So congratulations, Erin O'Malley. Here's a little video presentation on Erin O'Malley's accomplishments at Arcadia High School.
My name is Kevin Mooney. I'm the Assistant Principal of Student Services at Arcadia High School. And I'm very happy to introduce Lisa Dahl from the CTE Curriculum Consortium, and she's here to present an award to one of our students.
Hi, and thank you for having me. I would like to tell you a little bit about the competition that we had. We had a statewide competition for a new logo for our Arizona CTE Curriculum Consortium. And across the state, students submitted logos. We had over 77 students submit, and then we had a team vote on those submissions. And Erin was our winner of the logo contest, and you can see this is the logo that we chose. And with that came a few prizes. Well, first of all, she'll have her certificate, so she'll keep it in her portfolio. And we'd like to present you with a plaque, so you can always remember. But the really cool part is the prize was a GoPro camera, so she can do some wild and crazy things with this. So
So we're enormously proud of Erin. She's a third-year student here at Arcadia and plans to make a career in graphic design. So this was a wonderful opportunity for her to produce work that's portfolio quality.
Congratulations, Erin. Thanks for representing Scottsdale Schools so well. And Ms. Kerr, thank you for doing a great job in the classroom with her. Next, we have our City of Scottsdale Constitution Day winners. Dr. Dave McNeil and Dr. Mitch Van Echten are going to recognize our elementary and middle school grand prize winners.
Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Peterson, Marty, I would ask that the proud principal from Yavapai Elementary School, Nancy Hudson, come to the podium, as well as the proud principal, Terry Kellen from Mountainside Middle School. Okay, Constitution Day. Well, to commemorate Constitution Day, the Honorable W.J. Jim Lane hosted a Mayor's Constitutional Day contest. The City of Scottsdale received over 160 entries for the contest. The contest was divided into 3 categories. One grand prize winner from each category wins a gift certificate to the Scottsdale Fashion Square. 1st through 5th is one category, 6th through 8th, and the high school as well. Scottsdale Unified School District had 2 of the 3 finalists, grand prize winners. Marina Abdelmalik, if she is here, could come to the podium and be recognized for her great work. She's on her way. She's a student at Yavapai, and she won the 1st to 5th grade category. So let's recognize her, although she is not here.
Thank you. A student at Mountside was the grand prize winner in the 6th through 8th grade category. That's Abby Davis. I don't know if Abby's with us tonight.
Abby's here.
Additionally, I would like to point out that SUSD had 15 additional students who were finalists in the contest. Congratulations to all of our students.
Next, I'd like to invite up Mary Lou Mercino and John Muir to recognize our honorees for the City of Scottsdale Mayor's Committee of Employment of People with Disabilities.
Good evening, Governing Board President Kirby, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Peterson and Marty. Tonight, we have the pleasure of recognizing the Scottsdale Mayor Committee on People with Disabilities honorees. On October 23rd, both John and I attended the Mayor's Committee, and that has been going on for 27 years. And for 27 years, they've been honoring people, teachers, students, paraeducators, and employers of students with disabilities. This year's honorees, we had 2 Coronado High School employees who were honored. Shanann McClure, who is not here this evening, and as Paraeducator of the Year, Carol Herrick, and neither one of them can be here, but I wanted to recognize them and let you know what we said about them that evening. Shanann, as Teacher of the Year, is a talented teacher who's devoted to all of her students. She has developed and delivered a highly successful program for students who are on the autism spectrum. Her main goal is to teach them independence as well as job skills and job readiness. Her students learn functional skills and also self-management skills in order to be successfully employed in the community. We recognize her as one of the best special ed teachers in the Scottsdale Unified School District and one of our best self-contained autism teachers. Her classroom is used as a model for programs throughout the district. Carol Herrick was Instructional Aide of the Year or Paraeducator of the Year. Carol has 8 years of experience at Coronado High School's Life Skills program. She is a talented paraprofessional, and I have to tell you that without the wonderful paraprofessionals that we have in our classrooms, our teachers could not do their jobs. Carol's job is to go to Brighton Gardens nursing home, where she works with the students and teaches them everyday life lessons. All of them are showing progress and self-initiative because of the skills that she is working with on a daily basis. So I'd like to honor both Carol Herrick and Shanann McClure.
Come on up, guys. Thank you, Mary Lou. My name is John Muir, Madam President, Governing Board members, Dr. Peterson, Marty. Again, I have the pleasure to come up, and Andrews works for Building Services, and I just wanted to share one of the many things that he does when he works with our kids. He has got, thank you very much, amazing talent. These pieces have been showcased at the Transition Conference. He works with these kids, making wallets. He does dream catchers. He's funny, when we met and celebrated him, first thing he did when he saw me, he goes, okay, here's what we're going to do next. We're going to be doing flutes made out of, PVC, all of these things. And we started out with just a little bit of, feeder money. And now what they've done, and I appreciate Gail and Michelle Myers and Alicia McGovern for nominating for this very prestigious position, a position that Patty Bilbrey has won in the past. So it was an honor to be there to celebrate. And again, thanks Gail for giving my person the ability to share with your teams. And again, I'd like the two of you guys to share, if you have a couple moments, to tell them what you do.
Well, this all started about 2 years ago when I was going down the sidewalk and I seen some of the kids out there in Team 7 pushing a broom, and it was awfully hot out there, and I said to myself, well, maybe there's something I can do to get them out of the sun. So I started with Mary Gilly's class, and we started making at first we made flutes out of just wood sticks, and we drilled holes through them and notched them and put another hole in there, and they made a little whistle. This year they've been making sand paintings. We're going to do, they're finishing up the sand paintings, and after the sand paintings, I'm going to teach them how to make Native American flutes out of PVC. After that, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of things that I can teach these kids what to do. After that, I started with Alicia McGovern's class, and they made necklaces, they made bracelets, they made a lot of things. And this year now they're making lanyards to sell. They're trying to raise money for equipment that they need that's 15 years old, and it's tough going, but we made about $1,100 so far, but we're dead in the water right now because we've outsold Chaparral High School. So now we're trying to move on to some other high schools, and I'm bogged down because I don't know how to go about it, but I'll figure it out, we will figure it out, and we'll get the lanyards out everywhere, and finally buy the equipment that they need. Thank you.
And so, take it away.
John, Mir, Team 7, match, made in heaven. John, Mir, Team 7, match, made in heaven. John, Mir, Team
I just want to thank all of our folks, because to have our building services people that most folks do not connect with students, making a difference with special needs students is a huge, huge thing. And so I'm proud that they're able to step up and make that connection and understand what it takes to really connect with a special needs student. And the special needs students are teaching us a heck of a lot. So it's really a great partnership, and I appreciate everybody being involved in that. So thank you. We got some great things on the horizon coming up that we've been meeting that hopefully we're going to come to fruition that I think will knock your socks off in the future. We've been given a major piece of property to hopefully develop a big community garden that we will end up with my goal is to have a farmer's market that will be self-sustaining for our special needs population that will be partnered with veterans. So we're really looking forward to that, and we're proud to say it's going to happen because there's some huge philanthropists across the country that are going to donate to make sure that we are successful. So everybody, I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing because you guys are making a huge difference. Nancy, we do have our honoree here.
Yeah, so if we could, Nancy, can you bring Marina up so that we can at least recognize her for her great work with the Constitution Day essay?
This is our wonderful student, Marina. She's very proud of what she's done. Want to thank her teacher, Mrs. Coley, also. She's a third grade student and had written quite an inspiring essay that the mayor even asked her to read it at the celebration. So anyway, Marina, here's a certificate for you and congratulations.
Way to go. Next, I'd like to invite Tommy Burke up to recognize one of our incredible nurses that just recently in the line of duty, just as they do every single day, saved the life of one of our kindergartners. And we really want to say thank you for making a difference.
Board members, Dr. Peterson, I feel like it's the wrong time of year to be standing in front of you. Usually it's a little bit more in the spring. But it is absolutely my honor to nominate Navajo school nurse Diane LaPointe as a Scottsdale sensation. Listen to me, I'm crying. The mom of the child whose life she saved came and talked to the nurses last week, and she had a bunch of crusty old nurses sobbing because it was the most heartfelt, beautiful thing about what a beautiful child he was and how he was everything to her, and that the thought of being without this child was just too much for her to even imagine. I'm going to let you guys all see. The mom said that it was okay for me to share this, and he is a sweet boy. But I just wanted to say her quick thinking, calmness, and medical training all contributed to saving the life of one of her kindergarten students. Mia was choking on a piece of food, she said, I could see his name, with his airway completely blocked when he was brought to the nurse's office. She quickly assessed the situation and performed the life-saving abdominal thrust to dislodge the object and open his airway. Her extensive nursing experience and emergency training allowed her to truly save a child's life and highlights how crucial our school nurses are to each and every one of our district students and staff. Kudos to Diane LaPointe for embodying everything that we ask for in our district employees: excellence, strength of character, leadership, and compassion. Please join me in congratulating Diane LaPointe as a Scottsdale sensation.
Thanks, Diane. And also I want to recognize the quick thinking of our teachers, because when they saw trouble was happening and they could not respond accordingly, they quickly, went and got into the nurse's office. And so seconds save lives. And good job, Diane. We really appreciate all that you did. Next, I'd like to invite up Dr. Melissa Sackos to recognize our teachers who are going to be awarded the Scottsdale Scout Foundation mini grants. And all the work that the committee has done, and also the Scottsdale Foundation. They've stepped up and increased the mini grants this year, and we're very appreciative for the $50,000 that they are providing to our teachers that we would not have otherwise.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson, Marty, and Nina, these celebrations are getting harder and harder to follow. We're very excited as a foundation to recognize our 2013 mini grant recipients. In September, we shared with you the foundation had gifted $50,000, which was for mini grants, which was an increase from years past. After 5 years, the foundation is now totaling about $250,000 in mini grants that allow for innovation and creativity in the classroom. So since September, we had a number of teachers on their own time, on their own will, write a mini grant application that aligned not only to the standards in their classroom, but also the Common Core standards. You see many of them, they'll be recognized here, are also recognized for great work in CTE, such as Diana Cure. So our teachers go above and beyond to make sure that they have the tools they need to make sure our kids are very successful. So teachers and administrators, I'm going to be calling you up, so come grab your certificate from Dr. Forlis, and then we're going to meet in the foyer. Is that what that is?
The lobby.
The lobby. That sounds a little better. For a photograph. All right, with that, so from Ingleside, Ronnie Schultz. Saguaro, Matt Boner. Arcadia, we have Katie and Roni Asali. Desert Mountain High School, Bernie Fritz. From Navajo, we have Morgan Hewitt. From Yavapai, but representing the Coronado Complex, is Dana Silva. And our dynamic dance instructors across Saguaro, Arcadia, Desert Mountain, and Coronado, we have Rebecca Eugen, Denise Mack, Eliza Noriega, and Tracy Cuddy. I'm representing the Tavon. We have Marilyn Williams, Deidre Cannon, Alicia McGurshin, Tony Honeycutt, and Julie Ballard. All right, from Tavon, Marilyn. Again. You got two. All right. Saguaro, Matt Bach. Norman Calling and Michael Hart. And our dynamic CTE graphic design teacher, none other than Diana Cure. I'm waiting for the right photo to pop up on the screen so that you, for Marcy Cameron from Saguaro, who her students did a health assessment on our own board member Brown at the parent university. So you'll see that flash up too. And because of HIPAA, I cannot disclose the results. All right. So Marcy, are you here? She's also a former nurse and does the health occupations at Saguaro. Allison Bundy from Tonalea. We have quite a few names from ECC Choya. Shelly Allaby, Rhoda Hunter, Jessica Jaffe, Robin Wynn, Carrie Jamison, and Kate Kennedy. Rhoda Hunter and Kate Kennedy also received a second grant. Well, the first one was for a collaborative project, and then the other ones were the individual ones. From representing Chaparral and Saguaro in special education is Lisa Sanders. Sally Trim and Marilyn Kurtz from the Mojave District Annex. We got a big group from Cochise: Stephen Nagy, Colleen Taylor, Jamie Earhart, Nick Johnson, Megan Feeler, and Serena Gosling. And from Coronado, Stephanie Curran. Another great CTE teacher, Kathleen Wallen from Coronado. Sophia Greenberg, Copper Ridge. Liz Hughes for the Coronado Complex. Solomon from Hopi. Robin Wynn from ECC Choya. And another group from Arcadia Complex, Saguaro Complex, Shap Complex, Cherokee, and Head Start. This is a special education project. Camille Rodden, Sandra Arietta, and Hilda Conti. Congratulations to all of our teachers again for going above and beyond to write for these grant monies and provide these special opportunities for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Sakos. We have just a few more celebrations. Next, Mary Lou Messino is going to recognize our own John Muir from the Arizona Secondary Transition Services Award. This is a big award that's given out once a year across the whole state, and I'm proud to say that John's efforts truly deserve this.
Stacy, hold those till the end. Yes, ma'am. Madam President, Governing Board members, Dr. Peterson and Marty, it gives me great pleasure to talk to you tonight about John Muir, our Director of Building Services. John, as you all know, started Team 7 4 years ago. By cooperating with another district, Cave Creek School District, and Janet Holt is sitting in the back, she's the director, because she had a program going on in Cave Creek, and because of his knowing her, he was able to start Team 7 in Scottsdale for us. He was honored recently at the Arizona Secondary Transition Services School-Based Award from the Arizona Department of Education for his work on transition for post-secondary goals for special needs students. John began the program with one student and a vision of what we really should be doing for our students prior to graduating from high school and going on to post-secondary. He had a vision for teaming up our students with his journeymen to teach them vocational skills. These skills, paired with the practice and appreciation of the soft skills that we need and they need in order to get a job, helps these students succeed. Team 7 has grown to support, I just asked them the updated number, 67 students in our 5 high schools across Scottsdale. They do work in landscaping, facilities maintenance, food services, automotive, technology, and warehousing. So, congratulations, John.
Mary Lou, thank you very much. This was quite an honor to receive this. I appreciate. You might have to hold that red card up because, Anyways, this again was a goal that I put on the strategic plan, and it started with ask Dr. Peterson for permission. Cave Creek's model was a copy center model, and due to budget cuts, they decided to get the kids with special needs involved into that program. It's really been an amazing journey. I've met some amazing people at the state. We're a part now with, and I've got to do a shout out to Mr. Wade Moffitt, who is representing basically industry. How can we give them the skill sets for them to transition into meaningful positions into the workforce. A question was asked to me, could they help in the warehouse? And between Doreen Muir, Linda Kraynak, Stacy, who has been my right arm through all of this, the cheerleaders, it was a bonus, you know what I mean, to have that. But I mean, it's been an amazing vision. We took it to folks in industry that I work with at ASBO, and they've said, you know, if I can give them disability training, they'll hire our kids. So hence, we developed a program with distribution logistics with this warehouse model that we built over the summer with somebody just saying, do you think 7 kids can do that? And it's built, it's kind of a funny program to where when we built it, the folks at the warehouse went, can we use this? Is this for big yellows? So our people are benefiting from it. I want to thank Greg McDonald and all of the teams from Building Services that I could not have done this. This is an amazing honor, but I've got an amazing department. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Dr. McNeil and Dr. Von Nichten are going to recognize our Jump Rope for Heart honorees.
Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Peterson, Marty, and Nina. Yes, we have some more awards here to get out to you tonight and recognize some very special people. The first one is the Jump Rope for Heart. Specifically, I'm recognizing a dual event here. This was the Jump/Hoops event. If I could have the proud principal of Cheyenne Traditional School, Susan Armstrong, join us up here. And while at it, we're going to recognize someone from Redfield, so if we could have the principal, Christine Bono, join us too. Joining me tonight is Nancy Holbrook and Carol Ashheim of Cheyenne Traditional. They were the top fundraisers for the Jump/Hoops event. They helped raise the most money in Arizona for that category in the total dollar amount of $16,364.35 for the American Heart Association. Thank you very much and nice work.
From Redfield, we have Julie Sparks, who did an amazing job. Julie Sparks was the top online fundraiser winner. She helped raise the most money online in Arizona at $11,927 for the American Heart Association, and sending out the most emails, 964, thereby spreading the message the furthest. Redfield has raised the most money in Arizona, period. $17,377.61 for the American Heart Association with the Jump Rope for Heart event. Well done, Julie.
And finally this evening, Dr. Jeff Thomas is going to recognize the 2013 Administrator of the Year Award from the Arizona Association of School Psychologists.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board, Dr. Peterson, Marty, and Nina. It is my pleasure to recognize an outstanding administrator. Mary Lou Messina, would you come up here, please? I was trying to get out of this recognition today with jury duty, and was hoping she was going to get selected, but no such luck. Kept saying, man, you're going to be here, you're going to be here. On October 25th, 2013, Mary Lou was recognized at the event held by the Arizona Association of School Psychologists and recognized her as the Administrator of the Year. Now, to know about that award, first, it is a nomination from her colleagues, so the employees that she works with think that highly of her to put her name into the nomination. But secondly, it's a statewide award that really tells the story around great leadership within special education and working with our kids. And Mary Lou's very humble. She didn't tell anybody. She had to be ratted out by her colleagues and her staff around the award, and we didn't find out until she was actually at the recognition banquet. So Mary Lou, congratulations, and thank you for everything you do.
to thank everyone, especially my school psychologist. You know, I will tell you it was a leap of faith on my part when I left the comfort of high school and moved to special education. But I will tell you that it has been worth every minute of it because of the wonderful people that I work with. And that goes from our school psychologists to my coordinators, who in reality, a wonderful administrator taught me many, many years ago that in reality, I look good because of the people I surround myself with. And that really is the truth. Everyone that I've surrounded myself with in special education, my three coordinators, my school psychologists, the teachers, the paraeducators, everyone that it takes to put wonderful programs together. So really, this is for all of them. Thank you.
Dr. Peterson, and congratulations to all of our award winners tonight. It was all very well deserved. We next move on to the portion of the meeting where we have public comment. So if you wish to speak this evening, I'm going to go ahead and do all of the public comment on items on the agenda and not on the agenda at this time. So if you wish to speak, I would encourage you to bring a speaker card form up to Marty at this time. Public comment is an opportunity for the public to address the governing board. Personal attacks upon board members, staff personnel, or other persons in attendance or absent by individuals who address the board are not acceptable. In conformance with open meeting laws, the governing board may not discuss or take action tonight on any matters raised that are not already on the agenda. However, the governing board may respond to direct criticism, ask staff to review the matter, or ask that it be placed on a future agenda. As a reminder, we'll stick with the protocol that we've used in the past. I'll invite one person to come up to the podium, one person to also come forward and stand on deck so we can move through them. You'll be limited to 3 minutes. You'll get a 30-second warning from Board Member Brown sitting to my right. I would also ask that there be no applause or cheering. We are not at a football game. We are at a board meeting, and I would ask that you respect the speakers. So with that said, we have one comment on an item not on the agenda, and the rest of them are. So we'll start with the item that's not on the agenda, and I'll call up Steve Millam, and on deck will be Matthew Spalter, and I apologize in advance if I do not get your name correct.
Members of the board, I'm a teacher chaparral. This December will be my 9th year in the district. I'm proud to be a Firebird. I'm proud to be part of this district. But I want you to know some of my struggles. I teach physics and astrophysics. You'll hear many of my colleagues in other areas speaking. I'm the sole provider for a family of 4, and we're really struggling right now. I guess my question is this. I hear rumors, and I want you to know I'm absolutely committed to truth. Whether it supports my agenda or doesn't support my agenda, I'm absolutely committed to truth. So I'd like to know, I understand that other districts are giving much higher pay, that when our teachers leave our district, they get higher pay going to other schools, other districts. I understand our district, again, according to rumor, is very top-heavy with 51% of the members of the district not ever be interacting with students. And I think that leads to a lack of confidence by the public, that they see all these, what they may see as sweetheart deals. They see the teachers, the money not going to teachers. I've heard that before many times. District salaries tend to be much higher than teacher salaries. And if I understand things correctly too, if the budget override had passed, it would have restored a lot of the cuts that made to the district instead of going to teachers. So, and also I'm also wondering about horizontal moves, because I qualified for horizontal moves for several years. I try to go above and beyond the call of duty. Things every summer. I went to a workshop about a year ago, and I'm trying to go above and beyond the call of duty to be a good teacher, the best teacher I can be. But it's hard when there are very few rewards. So I'm other than recognition of my peers and my students. So this is a difficult thing to talk about, but I really feel like it's an important topic that I'd like to see if it can be addressed. There's a lot of teachers like me who are suffering and are having a really difficult time. I'd just like to hear your comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mellon.
Should I stay up here? I don't know the order. Should I stay up here? Should I take a seat? I don't know.
This item was not on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
We can request that it be on a future agenda, and I suspect that it will be when we get to budget discussions. We'll be talking about that quite a bit.
Okay.
So I would ask you to take a seat now and then continue to watch future agendas.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Matthew Spalter, and then on deck is Allison Marshall.
Hello everyone, good evening. I haven't done this before, so bear with me. My name is Matthew Spalter, and I am the student body president of Chaparral High School. I would like to believe that I am speaking on behalf of most students whom attend Chaparral High School by saying that we should not be fixing something that is not broken. As a student, I can personally say that this new grading system has affected my grades in a negative way. I consider myself an above average student, and now knowing that homework or checks for understanding has virtually no effect on my grades, I mean, I'm extremely unmotivated to finish the assignments given to me. Also, no matter which way you look at it, students' grades are based off of test scores with this new system. The student can successfully finish 100 math assignments and drop an entire letter grade by doing poorly on one test. If this new grading system is strictly for the kids, then I have a proposal. To determine whether the school board destroys the new grading system or keeps it going, I believe that the school board needs to have a district-wide survey for the students, simply asking if they agree or disagree with the new grading system. Then I believe as a community, we will have the true answer of what we should do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allison Marshall, and then behind Allison will be Julie Sanowski.
Hi, good evening. My name is Allison Marshall. I'm a parent of 2 students at Chaparral High School. And I have emailed the board about my opinion about the new high school grading policy. And just in summary, I am not in favor of the new policy. I, again, would second that we're trying to fix something that was not broken. I think the parent community looks at this effort as expending resources, time, money, in a district that has been put in a very tough financial position, and again, next year, an even worse financial position. And I think we look at efforts like this and ask why, from a top-down management approach, would we be addressing issues such as this that are affecting student morale, parent morale, and teacher morale. It is making my job as a parent tougher because I have one student that is on an honors level, one that is not on an honors level, and we have definitely sent the message that homework is a big backseat to test. So whether or not that was obviously not an intention of the policy, it has definitely been communicated to the students in a way, because I have seen my son's grades in one class go from an F to a B in the same day while still missing multiple homework assignments. To me, it is kind of similar to a construction company that's out building a facility that has to go by checklist, but we've now said we're not worried about the checklist anymore, we'll just wait until we pass our inspections. Well, how can we build on that foundation if we're communicating to our students homework doesn't matter? Secondly, I think that's important because I think we're undermining the authority of our teachers. Chaparral, in general, has an excellent teaching community. I trust them, you know, to instruct my kids, get them prepared for college, and I think now we have basically said to them, we don't trust you to work within the old grading policy. We don't trust you to utilize that as such that you're matching different students learning differently. I feel like we're kind of trying to do a one-size-meets-all approach, and I just don't see where that's getting us anywhere. I just don't see the benefit of why we would continue in this direction. And my request would be is that we do not continue with the new grading policy into the second semester. Thank you.
Marshall. Julie Sanowski, and then Sandy Kravitz is up next.
Good evening, board, Superintendent Peterson, Marty, and Nina. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak in behalf of the work that has been done with the various grading committees. I had the opportunity to join the grading committee at the middle school level as a teacher representative, and I was very excited about this work. I think we are just beginning the work that is necessary to report academic learning within our district at all levels. I do believe I understand the challenges of reporting accurate progress with student learning as a teacher, as well as a parent of 2 high school students in this district. I do feel we have a lot of work still to do at various levels. I'm very proud of our middle school group because I feel like we made some tough decisions last year. It wasn't pause and let's see what happens. Let's make some decisions, and I do feel that some of the calls were not only challenging, but I think they're essential to get us going the right direction. We need to have consistency of evaluation processes of student learning. I think with additional time for teachers to get together and discuss what an assessment is, how we evaluate student learning best within our certain populations of students, I think that's going to help alleviate the stress. I think we need to continue the communication from the district to the community. I think the district has done a great job with that, with all the open forums and trying to communicate what we're doing and where we're going. Again, I'd like to ask that we continue this very important work and move in this forward direction towards consistency of grading practices and policies within our district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sandy Kravitz, and next up is Steve Millam.
Good evening, governing board members, Madam President, Dr. Peterson. I'm addressing you again about the high school grading policy. I'm sure several well-intentioned administrators spent a lot of time formulating this policy with input from teachers, parents, and students. But a lot of us high school parents are scratching our heads about the need to completely revamp the grading policies that were in place at our schools. Except for the occasional teacher that was giving extra credit to a student that brought a box of tissues or a batch of brownies, grading was not one of our major issues. Surely principals can speak individually to these teachers, but this is not a reason to drastically overhaul an entire grading policy. Our district administrators are fond of citing data to explain policy changes and decisions. Where are the data and long-term studies illustrating the benefits of this grading policy? What grading policies have other high-performing school districts enacted? Wait, we already have those high-performing schools right here in the Scottsdale Unified School District, so why the need for change? I am most infuriated that this high school grading policy was not piloted in a single grade before it was introduced to approximately 8,600 high school students and teachers. Meeting in committee is not a substitute for real-world testing and only reinforces the belief that our kids are guinea pigs for this policy. Grades count in high school and have a major impact on college and vocational school admittance and scholarships. Is the district going to be attaching an addendum to our students' transcripts explaining the drop in Susie's grade is the result of a grading experiment gone awry? Considering our district's ever-dwindling budget, I have to believe that the time and salary of the administrators that developed this policy could have been allocated to address issues germane to each of our schools or to professional development. While I am most familiar with Chaparral, I am hearing similar stories about the stress and lagging morale of students and teachers at high schools across the district as a result of trying to adapt to or work around this policy. Sadly, some students have given up trying to earn decent grades. Students that worked hard for a B or a C are now earning a letter grade lower. The district regularly refers to the fact that it gathers committees of parents, teachers, and administrators to provide input and help craft policy reforms. Whether reality or not, the perception exists that a district administrator has already decided upon a course of action before a committee meets and the participants are being handled and steered toward a predetermined conclusion. We have some great teachers in this district. At Chaparral, for instance, we have many longtime educators, some of whom actually attended Chaparral, who still impart their passion and share their enthusiasm for teaching with their students. And each year, students look forward to enrolling in their classes. Does each school have room for improvement or specific issues? Certainly. While there may be commonalities among our schools, the needs of one school are not necessarily the same at another. Our schools have distinct personalities and programs. Standardizing our schools with programs such as a grading policy is killing the autonomy and thus the innovation and strength of each site. I could go on, but thank you very much.
Steve Millam, and the next up is Steve Geislinger.
Welcome, members of the board. Dr. Peterson, again, thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'll keep my comments brief. I'm not part of the English department, and again, I teach science. My feeling about how the grading policy is that is a top-down approach that feels forced, whether that was intended or not. It's saying that I don't have the ability to determine my own grades fairly. One of the normal procedures we teachers have, juniors and seniors, is that we write letters of recommendation. I've written half a dozen so far. And when I talk about my students' grades, when I say that the student got an A, I feel like they really earned an A. But I feel like it's not going to feel the same way if after I write a letter of recommendation when it's grades that are not quite the way I would like to have them determined. I think I should be respected. I believe I've earned that respect. I mentioned I've taught in Scottsdale Unified School District for 9 years, but I've taught for 19 years altogether in December. I'd like to have the respect to be able to determine what seems like a fair grade to me. And from one of my colleagues that's spoken from, particularly the English department, they take that very seriously, and I believe we all do. When we give a student A, we believe it should be because they earn it, and not because of some artificial means. If there are bad teachers, I think that should be dealt with individually, and I don't understand why that hasn't been done. I know some teachers that probably have not done a good job with that, and I don't know why they were never, at least apparently never, dealt with. And to me, that's what we do. Instead of punishing all teachers, it should be the few that are abusing the system, and rather than all of us. Again, I also feel like it was forced on us. I feel like it was also something that was not given a piloting to try it, and all of a sudden it's upon us. Thank you for your consideration. I hope that you will consider what we teachers deal with on a day-to-day basis, because many people have forgotten what it's like to be a teacher on a day-to-day basis, and I hope you will ask or remember your experiences if you were teachers. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Millen. And while we will not be talking teacher salaries until a later date, we will be talking grading policy later this evening, so stick around. Steve Geislinger, and that is the last speaker card I have. Is there anyone who believes they turned one in that hasn't spoken? Geislinger.
Thank you, Madam President, Dr. Peterson, governing board members. My name is Steve Geislinger. I stand in opposition to action item A regarding approval of the high school grading policy. I teach high school math and statistics at Arcadia, and I happen to be one of the only 20 nationally board certified teachers of secondary mathematics in the state of Arizona. I have served consistently and faithfully on this grading committee since its inception, and it has been a wonderful, very unusual committee in my experience. It's been a consistent pleasure to share the tenor and purpose of this committee with my fellow teachers. We have a fantastic collaboration with students, faculty, parents, and administration, all working together towards a single common goal of establishing a uniform, consistent, and meaningful grading policy. And that has been enforced and supported throughout the process. We've worked diligently and thoughtfully to learn about and design an implementation of best practices in assessment. While I do understand that there is a perceived and sometimes quite real apprehension towards Ed Center initiatives, administrative initiatives on part of select faculty, this committee has been tremendously empowered and has celebrated individuals as teacher leaders. We have worked hard to envision a framework in which student assessments will consistently reflect individual student mastery of course content. That has always been the central goal. The grade should reflect whether the student masters course content. This is obviously a considerable undertaking. It's full of complexity, and it takes time to develop and implement such a complex policy. It is very disheartening and enervating for me to hear that the board is discussing reactive procedures to undermine this committee's well thought out, and developed recommendations before any meaningful results can possibly be contemplated. The vast majority of teachers in my building and throughout the district are working hard to reflexively adapt their practice to focus on grading students based on mastery of course standards. We're working here towards having more authentic, directed, meaningful, and consistent grading across the district. Please honor the work both from the committee members and faculty across the district and continue to support the grading policies as they are currently in place. Thank you.
Mr. Geislinger. That concludes our public comment for this evening. Next up is superintendent's comments. Dr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and our public. Several comments I'd like to share with you this evening. First of all, I would just like to have us all reflect. This past Monday was Veterans Day, and I would just like to thank all of our veterans. We have teachers among us that are veterans, and they've all served in the line of duty to make sure that we are able to have this dialogue this evening. So I appreciate their service, and would just like to make sure that we do reflect on that. Next, this weekend was full of playoff games in Scottsdale schools. We had quite a slate. Saguaro High School and Chaparral High School moved on to the quarterfinals. Saguaro High School defeated Washington with a final score of 62-21. They will now host Sabina High School in the quarterfinals. And Chaparral High School defeated Tolleson High School with a final score of 64-21. Chaparral will now host Marcos Deniza in the quarterfinals. At the Swim and Dive State Championships, Chaparral girls finished 4th, the Arcadia girls finished 7th, Desert Mountain girls finished 13th, Chaparral boys finished 2nd, Desert Mountain boys finished 11th, Arcadia boys finished 21st, and the Coronado boys finished 23rd in Division III. We also had several individual state champions, and we had several state records set by Scottsdale students in the swimming pool this past weekend. We're very, very proud of that work. The cross-country meet was quite a meet. Not only did Saguaro High School girls finish 5th and Arcadia finished 4th in Division II, Chaparral girls finished 8th in Division I, but also exciting for the Chaparral girls was their coach coached and then ran off in the nick of time to get married right after the meet. So it showed his dedication to our girls as he was there at the meet, and then he quickly left. And all the girls were wearing bridal veils in honor of him. So it was kind of a neat thing to show the connectedness between our athletes and our coaches and the dedication that they have. The Saguaro High School boys finished 4th in Division II. Desert Mountain boys finished 15th in Division I. And the Chaparral High School boys finished 17th in Division I for cross country. I also would like to just share a quick proclamation for American Education Week. Today's students will be the leaders of tomorrow, and I truly believe that tomorrow's workers are in today's classrooms. We are equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities. Public schools give them hope and access to a productive future. It is the responsibility of our public schools to prepare students to successfully meet emerging challenges and opportunities. Whereas Scottsdale Unified School District employees, whether community specialists, teachers, nutritional service workers, librarians, nurses, or principals, counselors, bus drivers, and all other district employees, truly work tirelessly to serve and motivate our children. I hereby declare on behalf of Scottsdale School District and the Governing Board the week of November 18th, 22nd as American Education Week in Scottsdale School District. I encourage all citizens to extend their commitment to public education and the future of our children by supporting community education and educators. So we will make sure that our proclamation is posted. It's important that we recognize the wonderful contributions of our staff in making a difference in the lives of children. The Helios Grant, we were very, very fortunate to be notified that we are one of 3 school districts in the state of Arizona that has been awarded a planning grant of more than $260,000 by the Helios Education Foundation to help improve classroom instruction in science, technology, engineering, and math classes. The STEM Teaching and Learning Continuums will provide professional development and learning opportunities for teachers in the STEM areas. And I'm proud to say that this is the initial planning grant that, from what we hear, and Helios has never done a true K-12 award across the state, and for them to do that and for Scottsdale Schools to be one of 3 school districts in the state to be honored for that is truly a testament to our teachers and our district staff. This initial grant, from what we're told, will turn into several millions of dollars in the future. So good things are on the horizon for our STEM programs in Scottsdale Schools. Also, Coronado Desert Mountain are headed to the state marching band championships. We're very proud of the work that our marching bands have been doing. Our middle school dedications are coming up. We have Mojave Middle School on Wednesday, November 20th. We have Ingleside on Friday, December 6th, and Supai on Friday, December 13th. We also have recognition for Susan Leonard. She's a PE teacher at Ingleside Middle School that has been named the president-elect for the Arizona Health Physical Education Association. So our teachers are serving not only in the classrooms, but they're serving their constituents, and we're very proud of that. At the Arizona Health and Physical Education Convention, Nick Burgess, Aurora Padilla, and Austin Willie were students in Susan Leonard's first hour PE class in Ingleside, were presented with a session that they presented at the conference that was very well received, and we want to thank them for their work. And then finally, we have a Spotlight on After School Awards of Excellence. Our own principal, Margaret Cerna, was honored as a finalist for the Jane Rotsky Leadership Award. She was honored at the 2013 Spotlight on After School Awards of Excellence luncheon on November 2nd at the Phoenix Convention Center. And then last, the NCAA Higher Performing Schools has come out with their list of higher performing schools, and I'm proud to say Pima Elementary School, Hopi Elementary, Hohokam Traditional, Cherokee Elementary, Laguna Elementary, Sequoia Elementary, and Anasazi Elementary have all been identified as the NCEA higher performing schools based on consistent improvement in student achievement and above predicted percentage of continuously enrolled students scoring at the exceeds level on the Ames test. So we have incredible things happening in our classrooms, and we're very proud of our teachers and our students for all the exceptional things they're doing. That concludes my superintendent's comments, and I would just like to thank you for everything that's happening. And if I don't get a chance, I'd like to make sure that I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, because it is right around the corner.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Next up is the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, if a member of the board desires discussion on any item, it will be removed and considered separately. Do any board members wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. Action items this evening, information discussion items. We have 2 this evening. The first is an update on revisions to the 2014-15 high school planning guide, and the second is an update on student services. Dr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Our wonderful high school planning guide committee has been doing great work, and there's some few revisions that Dr. Mitch Von Echten will be sharing with us. He has been supported by Dr. Karen Benson on the committee, and both of them have been doing great work to shepherd through where we need to make sure our high schools are well positioned for the future.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, Governing Board members, Dr. Peterson, Marty and I, it's my pleasure tonight to present to you an overview of our recommendations for the 2014-2015 high school planning guide. Before I get started, though, I would like to recognize some people. First of all, my co-facilitator over to my left, Dr. Karen Benson, Director of Curriculum. I'd also like to give a shout out to Rose Wright, my Executive Administrative Assistant. Both of these were instrumental, both these people were instrumental in this endeavor. Next, I would like to recognize our committee members, and I would ask that they stand, those who are with us this evening, so they could be recognized for their hard work. Anyone? There they are, yes. Those are 4 of our magnificent Ed Services Assistant Principals. Lastly, I would just like to thank our curriculum specialists, lead teachers, and other district program directors who participate in this process. We begin our work August 19th this year. We met 9 times. These weekly meetings focus on one or more content special areas or special areas at each of these meetings. Recommendations for changes are presented by our curriculum specialists, lead teachers, and district directors at these meetings. Tonight we have as an informational agenda item our first read, and we're going to ask that we're going to recommend that at our next board meeting, December 10th, we're going to request final approval for the 2014-15 high school planning guide. Additionally, I will show you a slide in some time regarding 3 select classes that we're going to ask for approval at that same meeting that would be added to the current 2013-14 high school planning guide. I'll show you those classes in a moment. By December 20th, we finalize our common registration sheets. We will complete revisions within CIMAR to reflect the language and courses in our high school planning guide, post the high school planning guide electronically in both English and Spanish, and we will also prepare informational sheets regarding the .5 online graduation requirement to share with our counselors and with our incoming freshman students next year. So as a segue, I would like to also remind the board that effective next year, our incoming freshman cohort will complete a online or virtual learning experience at a minimum of 0.5 credit. Exceptions will be made for those students that have an IEP. I should say exceptions may be allowed. There's 3 goals and guiding principles that direct the work of the high school planning guide. Number 1, refine the record-keeping guidelines section of the high school planning guide to provide clarity and best practices. Examples there are we consolidated language regarding graduation requirements. We established processes for early graduation. A second example would be refining language that established a process for concurrent enrollments and home study credit. Number 2, we consider new course proposals based on the following. 1, courses are a necessity as a result of increased graduation requirements or in response to state statute. Number 2, courses that extend existing course sequences or further develop flagship programs with SUSD and are consistent with the SUSD strategic plan. Third, courses that address the needs of students in targeted populations to ensure equitable and rigorous course opportunities and choices for all students. Our third goal or guiding principle is to update the common registration sheets and courses in Synergy to reflect changes within the high school planning guide. Specific recommendations regarding courses. We're going to respectfully request the approval or recommend the approval of foundational math. This is a math course that the curriculum was written in conjunction with Scottsdale Community College. It is to support targeted students to prepare for the math placement tests at the senior level as they enter the college. Students receiving a C or higher in passing this class would be exempt from taking those placement tests and in fact be placed within the Maricopa County Community College District within the respective college-bearing credit math class. Second, in world language, we're recommending the addition of Japanese 3 and Russian 3. These are to extend our critical languages in these areas. Third, the IB we put in language regarding the IB pre-diploma clarification. This is specific to pre-diploma courses that are exclusive to the IB program and spell out specifically pre-diploma pieces within that program. We've added aligned courses within CTE to meet state sequences. Specifically there, we're recommending the addition of Engineering Design 3 to complement Engineering Design 1 and 2. This is a requirement by the Arizona Department of Education. We're also recommending the addition of 2 e-learning CTE courses, that's Medical Terminology and Intro to the Early Childhood Education. We believe this will build not only capacity within our e-learning requirement, but also build capacity within our CTE offerings. Additionally, we've added courses within the e-learning platform. There's several electives that we are recommended, and again, this is to build capacity within the recommended online requirement. Additionally, to add some courses for our seniors that need additional, that need to take additional elective credit prior to graduation. I want to point out that we do identify and bank courses that are, quote, not making across SUSD. In other words, these are classes that we see a history of students just not taking. Banking, in other words, we don't eliminate the courses. They're no longer in the high school planning guide as an option, but we put them into cold storage, so to speak. And if a school subsequently would later like to add these down the road, next year or the year after, as a part of their instructional program, we would not consider that a new offering and we would allow that course to be added. Specifically, we banked 7 CTE courses, 3 e-learning courses, and 9 brick and mortar courses that we just did not see enrollment. I alluded to this prior, in addition to our recommendation for the 2014-15 high school planning guide to be approved, we are also going to ask that these 3 e-learning courses be approved at the December meeting so that we can include them in the spring as options for our for our seniors who need to meet graduation requirements. And with that, I again want to thank all of the members of the high school planning committee, and I can take your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Von Echten. The board have questions? Nobody? Oh, I do. Thank you. Okay, Board Member Snead.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make sure that with the new online requirement, are we going to have capacity in the online department to serve those kids without any, because it would seem as though there would be a huge growth, and I just want to make sure that we have capacity as far as bandwidth, computers, teachers, everything.
That's a very good question. Board Member Snead, I have worked with our executive director for technology and our director of instructional technology regarding that matter. First, let me say that I think one thing that we need to do some educating with our incoming freshmen next year, and we work with our guidance departments. First, this is not a graduation requirement that has to be met within the freshman year. We need to work with students, one, to make sure that we really assess their ability at that age level to be in an online course. It might not be the appropriate setting at that time, but keep in mind that they do have their sophomore, junior, and senior year. With that, we're building additional classes in terms of e-learning options. Additionally, we're building capacity within our blended offerings, such as integrated math, that at the junior year students can take. So we're building capacity on that end. I think your question is specific to our hardware and bandwidth. And in working with Mr. Clark, I've been assured that we do have adequate bandwidth. We should be able to handle that. And that at each of the sites, we should have the appropriate amount of hardware availability that we could accommodate our freshmen who make this choice next year.
I was also just as concerned as I was about the hardware and the bandwidth is teachers who are trained in this sort of delivery and assessment of the online learning.
Yeah, and again, I think that working with Dr. Thuman, we are building that capacity, and we've had several students who are either full-time migrating to that teaching platform, instructional platform, or are teaching part-time in that platform. So yes, we continue to build that, and I believe it will be fine.
And I guess maybe to explain myself too, the reason that I'm mostly concerned about this is because it seems like the online classes have a higher dropout rate than regular classes do. So I want to make sure that our teachers, that everybody's ready on board to handle any bumps that we might run into.
I believe so. I can't speak to the dropout rate in relation to the requirement. I don't know that that's the case. The students that we see that choose to take online courses are successful. I think it's a time when we measure where they're at in that course in terms of their success and the level of completion. And I think that at times kind of skews the data in terms of what we're looking at in terms of their success. But we will need to look and measure again, as we do at each of the semesters, in terms of the numbers of credits earned by that, what is the completion rate. I think that will be very telling.
Any other questions? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. The reason that you're asking us to put this on an action item in December for the 3, I forget what they were, the 3 classes that you want to offer in the spring is because obviously we have to approve them before they can be offered. And I would assume that we need to approve in December the planning guide so that it can be published for our high school students so that they can enroll in February for next year.
Correct.
So help me with, in light of the budget that we're going to be faced with, and you talked about banking some classes due to low enrollment this year. If we put it in the high school planning guide, do we then have an obligation to offer it next year? Because I'm trying to balance between this, we haven't yet had the budget discussion about how many classes can we offer.
I think there's a couple ways of looking at it in terms of budget. Students that choose to take a course in an e-learning platform, there is a question of staffing, but we moved that staffing from brick and mortar to the e-learning. We should see in that regard then from staffing, it's a zero-sum game in terms of budget impact.
Are we just approving an e-learning high school planning guide? I'm actually talking more about.
No, Madam President, we're doing all of it, and I think what's important, there's a difference between offering a class and having a class make.
Okay.
So we will offer classes just as we normally do, but if we do not have the registration requirements for that class to make, that class will not make. And we will notify those students and they will be scheduled accordingly in another class of their choice.
But we still have.
So we have the offerings, but the class may not make, so that's the difference that we need to make sure we understand. Just because we offer it doesn't mean it will actually move forward. If kids don't sign up for it, it doesn't happen.
Okay, and if, and I'm just asking the question, and I'm not trying to head us into a budget discussion right now by any means. However, if we do not offer a class that might, call it an elective of some sort, not required for graduation, colleges, universities don't particularly care about it, but it still makes, okay? We then have an obligation to offer it. Could we not have taken that resource, that teaching resource in that class, that elective class that made, and moved that resource to a core English, science, math, and reduce class sizes in those areas?
We surely could do that, but we also have students that have to have so many electives, and so they would be taking some electives. And so really what would be happening, again, it's hard to say without looking at the actual numbers or registrations, but really what would be happening is if that is elective class made, that means there's another elective class that didn't make, and that staffing would be moved. So because students are students and they have to take X number of classes. So depending on what those classes are, the other staffing will be moved accordingly. We will not make classes if they're not viable.
So then do we go through an exercise of determining of the student population we have in high schools, how many electives they still need to graduate, and we limit our elective offerings to that number of electives required to meet the needs of the students to graduate?
I don't believe we do that exact exercise. What we do is we have student registrations. Based on those student registrations, we then put in what classes actually will make. And obviously those students first and foremost have to take their core classes.
Okay.
Once they take those, then we would assign the electives. You know, yes, a student could take a 5th math class as an elective, highly unlikely, but some could. So, or another science class. We've had students take multiple science classes because of their interest. So depending on those registrations, we do those assignments and have those classes make for the next year.
Do the elective classes have the same registration requirements that we're seeing in our core classes as actual enrollments? Class sizes 30, 35, 40. Do we require those electives to have at least that many number of students enrolled?
Madam President, members of the board, our guideline right now is classes need to have a minimum of 23 before we will consider staffing them. So that's where we are. Now, the only ones that are ever close is maybe a specialty IB class that a student would need, that we've committed to the IB diploma. Other than that, we have those staffing requirements and we hold true to them.
Okay, thank you. So that leads me to my last question. Japanese 3 and Russian 3, you're asking us to approve to add those. How many students do we have enrolled today in Japanese 2 and Russian 2?
I'd have to review those numbers. The Russian and Japanese are probably within the teens plus.
Okay, but Dr. Peterson just said that our minimum is 23 for these electives, so if they're in the teens.
Yes, and again, we need to clarify, the Russian class, we have a combination of a Russian 2-3 class.
So that's just it, those classes are at times stacked, so to speak, so they're taught and differentiated within the same section, so it's still a .2 staffing, but you will see multiple sections within there. Technically, that class, though, might be at 8 or 12. We often see that within some of our
But
fine arts offerings.
that's Russian 3, but in that same class, that same period, would be Russian 2 with
Correct.
20 students in it. So the total would be 30 students. 10 of them would be Russian 3, 20 of them would be Russian 2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next information discussion item is an update on student services.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Sakos and Dr. Pbis are going to be presenting our update for our student services, and we're very proud of the work that our folks have been able to do and the actual outcome, and you'll see that this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, members of the board, Marty and Nina. To follow what Ms. Musino said earlier, is that you are only as good as those that surround you. And the last 3 years, I have been fortunate enough through the Safe and Supportive Schools grant to have a dynamic team that has really helped move us forward in terms of our prevention and intervention. That being Dr. John Ballas, who will come up and also present, and Shannon Cron, who sits there shyly next to Dr. Ballas, because without them, we would not be where we are today. So I very much appreciate all the work that they have done. With that, we're going to start off by looking at a photo montage. This photo montage represents the demographics of the American student, and I want you to focus on one student. You may select a student that reminds you of your own child, a niece, a nephew, a grandchild, the neighbor. There are many life factors that adversely affect our students, and we see them drop out of school. That could be homelessness, mental health issues, family issues at home, low socioeconomic status that results in students dropping out early to help support the family. This is also true in Scottsdale Unified School District. We hope that, and if your student is gone, you're probably reflecting and going, oh no, they're gone, and there's a reality here in SUSD of all of those factors that I had mentioned, and it's our goal as our students grow older and get into high school and post-secondary, that all of them graduate with us and that they are college and career ready. So we want to see a full page, a full class of students that, again, are successful in our schools. And that wouldn't be possible without student services and all of the supports that our students need to overcome all of the different risk factors. With that, Dr. Karen Benson, a couple of weeks ago, when we did our deep dive on curriculum instruction and assessment, talked about guaranteed and viable curriculum, our first best instruction, aligning our standards with the Common Core standards and making sure that we train our teachers in order to deliver instruction so that students are engaged and they're eager and willing to learn. But I want to point out that when you look at this list here, there are factors that are hard for us to control. Those are the home environment, learned intelligence, background, and prior knowledge. So these factors do have a very big impact on day-to-day challenges for our students and for our teachers to be able to reach all students. The reality in SUSD, our demographics are changing. We're just over 25,000 students, as you know, 2,600 gifted students, 3,000 special education students. We have parents move to our school district for our special education services, and you can see why after all the recognition. 600 English language learners, 27% free and reduced lunch, and this ranges, depending on the school, from 3 to 86%. And the free and reduced lunch is based on a family of 4 living on less than $42,000 a year. We have our pre-K programs, very high number. We'll talk about how important it is to have early childhood development. And you can see at ECC Choya and ECC Oak, we have 42 infants. So this is a very critical piece to dropout prevention, that being early childhood programming. All of what I'm going to talk about today, it supports goal number 6, our school safety and student support, and the data that you're going to see that we share today also, again, helps us measure where we are in our strategic plan as we move forward to strengthen our programs. The scope of student services, so for tonight, I'm going to go over a scope of student services very briefly. As you received your PowerPoint and information in advance, there are some hyperlinks there, so hopefully you had a chance to navigate a little bit because there's a lot of information. Talk about our graduation and dropout rates over the last 4 years in SUSD. Talk about those effective dropout prevention strategies and highlight some of our strengths here in SUSD. I'll then turn it over to Dr. Pbis so he can take you through the tiered model of support, academic and behavior, talk about Pbis, we'll showcase the measurements of effectiveness for our middle schools, which we're very excited about, and talk about where we're going, and then we'll talk about mental health in schools. With that, this is just an overarching view of scope of student services categorized in 4 different areas. The prevention and intervention on the far left, what you see there in italics is what we're really going to hit more in depth on later on in the presentation. Pbis, positive behavior intervention supports. RTI is our response to intervention, mental health in schools, dropout prevention, our tier 2 and tier 3 behavioral interventions and academic interventions. Student assistant programs, it aligns with our tier 2 and tier 3 programs, Teen AA, parent education, NIDA, which is a drug and alcohol diversion, crisis response, and community and agency partnerships. So in terms of all the prevention intervention, that gives you just kind of a larger scope, and again, what is in italics there is what we're going to look at more specifically tonight. Our health services, of course, we began the night with the heartwarming story of the importance of our school nurses on our campuses. They do provide vision and hearing screening above and beyond what the state requirements are for our students. They also help us with our IEP and 504 compliance. We'll talk about Section 504 in just a minute, but this is specifically our students who have medical action plans for a variety of reasons, whether they're a type 1 diabetic, to a student with a life-threatening food allergy, to our special education students that are medically fragile. They provide health education to our students and our staff, assist with human growth and development, which is our sexuality education program, help us with community awareness, and they also are trained in the drug impairment training for education professionals, which is our DITEP training, which of course working with our students on our campuses and the secondary campuses comes in very handy. In terms of support services, I'm going to talk a little bit about Homebound. Homebound is defined by state statute. It is specific for students who are chronically ill and cannot attend school for a variety of reasons, whether it's mental, physical, a number of reasons. We have students who are unfortunately diagnosed with cancer, for example. They're out while they're in treatment. That would be an example of homebound services. There's an application process and cooperation with the treating physician for supporting our students who are on homebound. McKinney-Vento is the Homeless Act. And we do have a grant that goes along with this. There's an application process. Our social workers are the case managers, and McKinney-Vento helps support students who are in transition, displaced, or in hardship. And I'm going to talk about a little bit later some of our numbers that is a contributing factor to impacting our dropout and graduation rates. Our SROs, they do a lot with support services for our students. SPI, Scottsdale Prevention Institute, we gather those monies from the city of Scottsdale that provides for prevention programs on all of our campuses. 504, Section 504 protects all individuals with disabilities. It's the overarching protection including students who qualify under IDEA. We have a coordinator on every campus that are our assistant principals, and again, it goes through an eligibility meeting, and the questions to be eligible for Section 504 is whether or not a student has one or more of a major life function that substantially impacts that life function, be it concentrating, thinking, learning, walking, etc. So we do have several 504s in our school district. Compliance is a big piece, and I think I shared this when we did the board orientation just short of a year ago, talking about a lot of what we do in student services has to do with state and federal compliance. Student scholarships, utilizing our grant monies to provide student scholarships, again, for credit recovery and keeping students on track, and grant applications. In terms of education support and consultation, a lot of professional development is just as important in student services as it is when we're talking about our standards and curriculum. IPTs, intervention planning teams, guide how we work as teams in our schools in order to set students up for success. Data analysis and decision making is critical. I've shared with you over the last couple of years a lot of data to help measure the effectiveness of Pbis, and that keeps us on track to see what we have to refine and whether or not what we're doing is working. Peer sensitivity, crisis management and consultation. I know you get the emails when we have crisis in our community, ranging from a death of a student, a parent, a teacher, and our crisis team that is actually led by Dr. Cohen in special education is phenomenal, meeting the needs of our students and our staff. And then mental health training protocols we're going to get in depth on, and then threat assessment is also critical when we're talking about ensuring our schools are safe when we have students that are displaying a pattern of aggressive or dangerous behavior. Our school psychologists lead a threat assessment in order to help us determine what we need to do, our next steps for that student, including the support services for that student. So that's the scope of student services at large. All right. With that, I put up here the grants that we have for this school year, just to give you an idea of how we continue to support the initiatives that we're doing in student services. You've heard a lot about safe and supportive schools. Unfortunately, this is our last year of that grant, but we're very happy to see the outcomes and are working very hard on sustainability for not only our coaches, but making sure that we continue with this initiative. Scottsdale Police Department gives us money from the RICO funds, which they gather from product that they seize. We'll stop there. In our community, stolen cars that they sell cash, and we utilize those RICO money in alignment with positive behavior intervention support. So it aligns exactly with our governing board, our strategic plan, and in alignment with our initiatives in our safe and supportive schools. Our dropout prevention money in part supports our school social workers, which we have primarily at our southern middle schools and placed at one high school. They act as our case managers for McKinney-Vento, but they also, of course, work with students when they need social and emotional support. This is a 3-year grant. It's based on a tax, and right now we don't know the end date of these monies, but we hope every year that we are able to continue with dropout prevention monies. Scottsdale Police Department, for instance, we apply for safe and supportive schools is competitive. The Maricopa County School Health Index, this helps our school nurses with some of the initiatives that they're doing in their health offices. McKinney-Vento, as I mentioned, $40,000 doesn't go very far when we have been averaging about 300 homeless families each year. That amount has doubled since 2008 from approximately 166 to 300, over doubled to 370. And so again, this ensures that our students have those needed supports in order to be successful and stay in school. And last but not least, this year, our City of Scottsdale money is specific for our IGA for the Scottsdale Prevention Institute on all of our schools, with the exception of our S3 schools, because they already have the resources, have SPI prevention specialists in the schools to help again with prevention programs, drug awareness, social responsibility, managing time management, stress management, some of the larger areas that students need those supports in. With that, here are the graduation and dropout rates in SUSD, and then the following slides have them in chart form. Looking at the dropout rate, if you look at the state dropout rate, beginning in 2009-10, moving up toward this year, you see there's an increase along over the last 4 years. Our district follows that same pattern, that increased upwards. So you can see that within our state, there's a concern with students who are dropping out of school. I do want to add though, when you look at Coronado and Saguaro, there are a couple of factors that I want you to think about. One, I mentioned McKinney-Vento, our numbers doubling from 2008 to 2010, where we have remained steady. A lot of our families are within those two learning communities prominently. I also want to point out that our free and reduced lunch has increased upwards of 5% with some of those feeder schools that you see in those two learning communities. So those are factors that we need to take into consideration when we see an increase like we're seeing there. And naturally, we have to continue to look at that data and to analyze and figure out what's going on so that we can provide supports to our students. If you look at the graduation rate, again, starting with 2009, 2010, we get these numbers from the state and they don't have 2012, 2013 ready yet, but you can see SUSD hovers around a 90% graduation rate, which is well above the state, and that's something to be proud of. We also need to be mindful that over the last few years, the way they calculate the graduation rate is a little bit tricky, and there's a formula, and I've learned more about the formula than I really wanted to, but I will tell you that one of the impacts to the graduation rates, and again, it takes our Coronado and Saguaro take a hit to this, and these are our two schools that have decreased, is we have strategically placed many of our self-contained special education classes on those campuses. Central location in order to meet the needs of the larger community, and when a student does not graduate within their 4 years, you identify your cohort year, that freshman year you start. If they don't graduate, then that counts against us. So our students within their IEPs that the teams decide that they can attend up until their 22nd birthday, those students do not count for us when we're calculating the graduation rate. So when we look at this data, we say, why is Coronado and Saguaro, why are we seeing a decrease from 10-11 to 11-12? And I'd expect to see that 12-13 is because, again, the way they calculate that graduation rate. And naturally, there's a number of other factors. Our demographics within our learning communities are changing. The socioeconomic status within our communities are changing. So there's a lot of factors you have to consider when you're looking at this data. With that, this is just a couple of visuals to show that. Naturally, with our graduation rate, over to the right is the state. They're well below SUSD with all of our schools. And of course, with the dropout, they are above. And again, with the exception of Coronado, we're taking a closer look again at the dropout rate at Coronado, keeping in mind those factors that I shared with you. In terms of dropout prevention, we look to the National Association of Dropout Prevention for those effective strategies, what works. And what is listed here is some things that SUSD has really focused on. I want to make sure that I point out, and we talked about mentoring before being important for school connectedness. When we talk about the 2.0 and the F data, this is one of the areas that can really make a positive impact for our students. And so our campuses have varying forms of mentoring programs and tutoring programs that really help them in schools. And so that is, of course, an important area. Service learning is something that SUSD has been a leader in for many years. Again, making that connection to the community and serving our community. Our after-school activities, including athletics. We talked last week about our 6th graders now being included at the middle school with higher numbers than our 7th and 8th graders. We like to get them engaged in our schools very early on. And so, again, that is an area that we, of course, are proud of. Individualized instruction, this includes just our support services, all the way up to our targeted interventions, our students under Section 504, and our students under IDEA in terms of their IEP. And CTE, Career and Technical Education. I have the pleasure of overseeing CTE this year, and I'll tell you that it's been listed as a dropout prevention strategy, an effective one for years, because it serves students who might not otherwise be engaged in a regular classroom. So hands-on, practical, and it used to be considered a vocational training. Well, no more. It's really intended to prepare students to be college and career ready, and so it aligns very well with where we're going as a nation and as a state. So a couple of plugs for CTE is that, one, you saw tonight Diana Cure and her student come up here and talk about her aspirations to go to college to study graphic design, and she's well on her way to developing a portfolio. Also, many of our instructors, CTE instructors, are dual enrolled certified. So our students in our CTE programs, such as our biotech, our nursing, health occupations, are leaving there with college credit, which is amazing, because we can talk about how much money that's going to save our families and our students when they're going out in the field. But in addition to that, some of our courses offer successful completion. You can take a course and have a certificate that will allow our students to be career ready while going to college. And the best example, and again experienced by our board member Brown, is our health occupations at Saguaro. Students at the end of 1 year have their CNA license. So that is just a step below our RNs, and so our students are going out and working while going to college and having that practical experiences. They're getting internships like you would not believe. So I just want to point out that I don't want CTE to look at as, wow, this is just for those that are going to drop out. Really, it's an excellent program for students who are moving on and ready to be college and career ready. I'm going to call up Dr. Dallas to talk about our tiered model of support, academic and behavior. And while he's coming up, I just want you to look at Tier 1, our first best instruction. When we had the deep dive with curriculum instruction and assessment led by Dr. Benson a couple of weeks ago, what she talked about was first best instruction with, again, our standards aligned to the Common Core, the professional development that our teachers get, the need for differentiated instruction. So she talked about the importance of all what that team does. And naturally, we need to be able to respond when students aren't getting it, when they need a little bit more targeted or individualized support. And I still need your thunder, or?
A little bit.
Okay.
I wanted to spin it myself.
Okay, I'm gonna go back. Oops, I really went back, didn't I? Oh, no. I know there's an easier way to do this, but. Okay, it's yours.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sakos. Okay, so there's our three-tiered model of intervention, and here comes our tiered model of support that go along with that. On our right side of our three-tiered model of intervention, we have 3 tiers of behavioral interventions. Starting at Tier 1, we implement Pbis, positive behavior interventions and supports. Tier 1 of Pbis includes the creation of school-wide expectations, a school-wide recognition system, standardized discipline processes, and database decision making. The thinking there, and this is research-based, is that if we can teach all students on a campus what the behavioral expectations are on that campus, that they'll have a better and easier time understanding how to behave in one classroom and a second classroom and on the playground than they will if they have vague understandings of what behavioral expectations are. As we move up to Tier 2, we expect about 10 to 15% of students will have difficulty at Tier 1. We have additional interventions in place. Those include interventions such as check-in, check-out, goal setting, mystery motivators, or self-monitoring. Check-in, check-out, goal setting, again, look at increasing school connectedness. It involves creating daily goals with a peer mentor on campus or with a teacher on campus, and allowing you to check in with that teacher daily to see whether or not those goals are being created. All of those interventions are also research-based and have data behind them to show that they work. About 5% of our students won't respond at Tier 2 and will need more intensive interventions. So at Tier 3 on the behavioral side, we have our school mental health referral protocols. Some students will need interventions that we can't handle on our campuses, so we'll refer them to our community partners. We've worked for about 5 or 6 years now to develop relationships with community partners, and we actually have multiple agencies and behavioral health providers and psychologists and private practitioners that we can refer our students to when we need to do that. That allows us to keep in touch with them constantly and understand what their treatment process is so that when students return to our campuses, we can continue that treatment process. We've also, over the past couple of years, developed student assistant programs on our campuses. Student assistant programs, or SAPs, allow us to create groups for students when we have an identified need for a group. And again, it's all based upon data. An example is last year, we identified the need for a grief and loss group on one of our campuses. About 80 students signed up for that grief and loss group. We were only able to accommodate 12 students. So we're looking to expand our SAP programs this year, and we were able to identify some funds to send about 5 or 6 counselors to SAP trainings in September and again in November. Moving over to the academic side of interventions, as Dr. Sakos mentioned, at Tier 1 we have first best instruction. When we move to Tier 2, we understand again that about 10 to 15% of our students may have difficulty responding or being successful at Tier 1. So we have some sample interventions listed on the board right now, and those include essential skills software, sort of success, 6-minute solution, aerobics, and guided reading. Those interventions address both reading and math, and they're either computer administered or direct instruction. They're also research-based, and they exist in some schools currently and not other schools. A lot of our interventions are tailored to meet the needs of individual schools and the culture on that campus. When we move to Tier 3, again, we expect about 5% of our students won't respond to Tier 2, so they'll need a more intensive intervention. This is also a data-based decision. When we look at our data and we decide that a student needs Tier 3 intervention, that might include a formal referral to our IPT, our intervention planning teams. Intervention planning teams would require a team of teachers, an administrator, a counselor, if necessary, a nurse, psychologist, the parent, and when appropriate, the student to get together to problem solve what might be wrong or what might be happening and hindering a student's success. A plan will come in place, there'll be progress monitoring, and then in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, we should reconvene to look at whether or not the student's being successful. Foundations is an example of a very intensive reading program. All of our teachers that administer foundations have been trained in foundations, and again, there's progress monitoring involved so we can determine whether or not a student is being successful with that Tier 3 intervention. Moving on to positive behavior interventions and supports and student services, that's been our primary intervention for the last several years. Just a reminder of what Pbis is. It's a positive, proactive, preventative framework. Preventative meaning that when implemented at the elementary level, we should be able to prevent the manifestation of behavior problems and promote the protective factors necessary to keep children from getting into trouble or getting referred to the office as they move to middle school and high school. That's not to say we can't implement PBIS in middle schools or high schools. We're also currently doing that as well. It creates and sustains a safe and effective school. Research has shown us that when we can implement PBIS with fidelity, that will decrease risk factors that would make our schools unsafe, will decrease drug and alcohol use, will decrease teen pregnancy, and will decrease a host of other risk factors. Emphasis is placed on the prevention of problem behavior, development of pro-social skills, and again, the use of data-based problem solving. So it increases the capacity of our schools to educate all students with evidence-based school-wide classroom and individual interventions. This table shows various stages of implementation that our schools are in terms of PBIS. So we have our schools listed on the left that are implementing PBIS. You'll notice an asterisk next to some of them, and those schools with an asterisk are either in their first year of implementation or are revisiting the way they've implemented PBIS to make it more congruent with their school's culture. When we implement PBIS, that first year of implementation, year one is a planning year. So that's the year where we put together a school team, we call it a leadership core team, and that leadership core team determines how we're going to fold PBIS into the current culture of the school so we can make it sustainable. The job of that leadership core team in year one is to create that acronym that will define what their behavioral expectations are. So some examples are Hopi Hawks. HAWK stands for high expectations, acceptability, working hard, knowledge, and safety. Those expectations are then defined in every area of the school and then taught to students. So year one also looks at how we're going to teach them to students. They'll plan something like Passport Day where they take students to different areas of the campus and have them role play the different ways that they can display those behaviors on the campus. Year one also involves creating their recognition system. I was at Coronado recently when I talked to a student about what the CHS way means. And I asked the student about the CHS way, and she reiterated it to me like that. I asked her what a Don dollar was, and she told me how she earns Don dollars, and then she looked at me and said, they're real hard to earn. They don't just give them out. And so I said, that's the way it should be. So she knew, that student knew that the way she earns Don dollars on Coronado's campus is by displaying characteristics that are consistent with commitment, honor, and showing respect, the CHS way. This table continues to go on with more of our schools that are implementing PBIS in the years of implementation that they've been in also. From 2011-12 up until 2013-14, we started out with about 6 schools implementing PBIS, and we've moved up to 22 schools implementing PBIS. I'm proud to say that SUSD has become a district leader within the state of Arizona for PBIS implementation. Districts come to us and ask us to train them in PBIS. Unfortunately, we have to turn them down, our commitments to SUSD, and they won't pay us any money to do it. So how do we look at the effectiveness of PBIS implementation? As Dr. Sakos mentioned, she's been standing up for the last couple of years and showing data. We continually monitor our data to make sure that our effectiveness of implementation continues. This graph shows the district-wide decrease in office discipline referrals, and ODR stands for office discipline referrals. Some of our colleagues call them odors. So in 2012-13 to 13-14, district-wide, we've seen a 32% decrease in office discipline referrals. That includes schools that are not implementing PBIS, which is fabulous. We think that some schools that aren't implementing PBIS have latched on to some of the concepts that are consistent with PBIS, and we're seeing decreases now in their discipline referrals. And just to reiterate, every time a student is sent to the office for discipline, that disrupts the classroom, it disengages a teacher from teaching, it keeps an administrator from being an instructional leader, and takes about 20 or 30 minutes out of their instructional day. So if we have thousands of discipline referrals over the course of the year, we're losing hundreds of instructional time within our district. So we've seen a district-wide decrease, but that decrease is more evident in our PBIS schools. Our non-PBIS schools have decreased by 26%. Our PBIS schools have decreased by 37%. Again, evidence that our PBIS schools are doing well, but our non-PBIS schools are also doing well. So we're real proud of the progress that all of our schools are making. Bullying and harassment have been hot topics not only in Arizona but nationwide. We focused on middle school for the last several years because of the middle school task force that we've had a few years ago and the implementation of Pbis at the middle level. So these data come from the middle schools, and looking at the decrease of bullying and harassment from 2012-13 to 13-14, we see a significant decrease, almost by 50%. Alcohol, drugs, and tobacco, again, another hot topic not only in Arizona but nationally, looking at a decrease of referrals to the office from 2012-13 to 13-14 of over 50%. Moving along to mental health in our schools, about 25% of the general population will have a diagnosable mental disorder at some point in their life. We have 25,000 students in our district, so if we do the math, that's going to come to over 5,000 students. In 2013-14, we've been forward-looking and thinking about how we can expand our mental health in the schools framework. So we are looking to expand our community partnerships for students who need those Tier 3 interventions. We continually make relationships with behavioral health organizations so that we can make a phone call when we need to, open up a bed at a hospital if we need to, and get our students who are in crisis into that bed if we need to. We've developed wraparound services with various agencies to facilitate coordination with care. I can't tell you how many times we have students that we refer out of our schools to an agency, a practitioner, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and once they're out there, we never hear from them again. So when they come back into our schools, we don't know what happened in that interim. They often come back and they've been prescribed several different medications. They may come back in a, what we would call a flat affect, a zombie-like state where they've been heavily medicated, they're not engaged in learning, they may have additional behavior problems from stimulants that they've been prescribed. We don't know any of that. So one of our goals has been to increase those wraparound services and be able to communicate with practitioners as they're treating our students. It sounds like it might be a little bit elementary, but it's very difficult to get a physician on the phone when we have time and they have time. So we've been making attempts to engross ourselves in their child-family teams, and that's something we've been working on for the last year and a half. We've been collaborating with state and local agencies to streamline our crisis network care. Again, I'm very proud to say that Scottsdale has been a leader in the state in terms of effective policy change. We've been working with the Arizona Department of Health and the Arizona Department of Education, along with 14 other school districts, to make changes to how crisis networks respond when a student has suicidal ideations or maybe harm to themselves or to others. We've been facilitating, again, our student assistance programs, our SAFs. We've been expanding to other campuses. We're looking this year to host our 4th annual Mental Health Networking Expo. We started that 3 years ago. The purpose of that is to bring together behavioral health agencies, private practitioners, community service agencies with all Scottsdale unified staff so that they can network and meet each other. We started 3 years ago with 75 people. Last year we had over 200 people, including state-level agencies such as the Arizona Department of Health, Arizona Department of Education, all of our major universities, and political figures from the city of Scottsdale. District-wide, we're continuing our training on mental health referral protocols, training on threat assessments, suicide risk assessments, crisis response, mental health screenings, and we'll continue our crisis outreach and involvement. What kind of trainings have we done this year? Student Services has been involved to date on 2 district-wide trainings for Pbis. That involved over 20 schools with over 100 participants. We have 4 more district trainings planned for this year. We continue data management and decision-making. We've done 4 trainings so far. We have another one planned for December. We do trainings on intervention planning teams. We've done 9 so far this year. That includes at the building level and for the district. We've done online trainings in office discipline referrals so that we can streamline that process and make it more effective and efficient for teachers. We've done 12 of those trainings. Every month, schools that are implementing Pbis, either myself, Ms. Cron, or we have another member of our team, Dr. Holly Asher, will go to a school site and work with their leadership core team on the implementation of Pbis, making sure it's done with fidelity and integrity. We've done crisis response for suicide, for death, including natural causes or otherwise. So we provide support and service in those situations. And we've done threat assessments for cutting suicidal ideation, harm to self, others, hallucinations, sexualized behavior, substance abuse, and weapons violations. Moving on, where do student services want to go? Being forward-looking, we want to refine our intervention programs based on data to continue to support students. We want to continue the expansion of Pbis and RTI within our district, continue behavioral interventions and strategies, integrating academic interventions and strategies. We want to continue our training in data analysis and interpretation. That's critical for the targeting implementation of interventions, expanding our student assistance programs at the high school level and bringing that into the middle level, continuing the development of our community partnerships, and continuing to seek grant opportunities and alternative sources of funding so that we can help provide support for all of the initiatives that we want to continue with. And that's it. Questions or comments?
Great, thank you very much. Board Member Perlberg.
First, thank you so much. I have a fondness in my heart for your department and what you both do for our district, as I know we all do. I've always heard from teachers and even principals how one student in a classroom with either behavioral issues or mental health issues can affect the learning for an entire classroom or even an entire grade. So even though 25% may to some sound, or as far as our children who might be affected by something like this, some may say that's small, but it's really not, because it really does affect every single student in our school district. And I love for you to be able to share with everyone what our district does for our student as the whole student, the whole mind, body, everything, and just thank you so much.
Jackson.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to mirror what Board Member Perlberg said. Thank you for everything you do. I had no idea the scope of student services. It's kind of overwhelming, actually. Thank God you're here for us. And also congratulations on success of the Pbis program. I've got Pbis program. It's incredible what you've been able to do with that. And I brag about it all the time. I've seen it firsthand. I have a middle schooler and a freshman in high school. It's really it's a wonderful program, and I'm proud of it, and you're to be commended and congratulated as everybody who worked on it in the district. It's really a wonderful program, and thank you.
And I too want to echo their comments. You know, you never realize the value of your department and what you do until you need to use your department and what you do. And having had personal experience with your group last year, it's an experience I wish I could shout from the mountaintops, because I was truly amazed at the seamlessness of how the school district collectively reacted to my personal situation. So, it wasn't because I'm a board member, it was because the policies and procedures were in place and you just followed protocol. And so thank you very much. I hope that not as many have to use your services down the road. That would speak highly for our district. You've done a great job with Pbis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Madam President, members of the board, again, I would like to say just thank you to the whole student services team. We had an issue this weekend, and a family contacted me. They were at their wits' end. They were at Phoenix Children's Hospital, didn't know what to do. I called Dr. Pbis. We were able to get them some names of some psychiatrists and help them out. I had no idea that right now the beds in the mental health hospitals for youth are completely full, and there's days and weeks waiting lists to get in to help children. So these guys are doing great work. And again, the weekend, it was a long weekend, and they answered the phone when I called them. So I just thank them for stepping up and helping out.
Madam President, board members, Dr. Peterson, thank you for your kind comments. I just want to point out one last thing. I put some sample posters down in front of you there. You see them? I was going to do Vanna White and walk around what Dr. Peterson was talking about. But these are examples of what you see in our schools in terms of the behavioral expectations. So just wanted to
point that out to you. And they do all know it well. They memorize it so well. All right, thank you.
Okay, so now we approach the action item for this evening, the approval of the high school grading policy. Dr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As I introduce this item, I just would first like to put a caveat on one of the issues that was brought out in the public comment this evening, and that's the fact that when it comes to our school district funding, per the Auditor General's report for this year, 60 cents of every dollar goes directly to our classroom instruction. That's our teacher salaries and those things. Another 11% goes to student support and instructional support that you saw. So 71% of every dollar we get into the district actually goes into the classroom and student and instructional support. 8% is spent on administration. That administration cost, so 8 cents of every dollar is spent on administration. That includes principals, assistant principals, directors of all departments, senior administrators in the district. So again, and we are lower than the state, and we're lower than our competitive surrounding districts. So we work very, very hard to make sure that we maximize the dollars to the classroom. I wanted to make sure we point that out because it was said that 54% of the dollars were sent to administration. That's just not true. 8% across the district, and that's all administration across the district. After last Thursday's work study meeting, I had a discussion with our governing board president, and we had decided to change the agenda item. So as you remember, the work study, initially this was going to be a discussion item, and we moved to change it to an action item in order to get direction from the board. We need to move forward. We need to let all of our staff, our teachers know that one, we value them, they're important, we care about them. I wish I could pay our teachers more. Unfortunately, I can't do that right now. The state doesn't give us any money. When we've taken a 20% pay reduction in budget in the state of Arizona in the last 4 years, it's hurt everybody. I am proud to say, even though we've taken that 22% funding reduction in the state, we have not cut teachers' pay. Other districts have cut teachers' pay. We haven't been able to pay them more, and that's a shame. Our teachers deserve more money, and they need to know that. I value our teachers. I will fight for our teachers every single day. The legislature, when they see me coming, they go, oh my God, here comes David from Scottsdale again, and I know he's going to beat us up about dollars, because we need to get dollars in our classrooms. We need to get dollars in our pockets of our teachers. They do incredible work. They're doing heavy lifting. And as these standards change, it's tough, because we don't have the dollars to pay folks to be able to say, you know what, the country is changing standards, and we need to make a difference out there. We have to change standards too. The state passes laws that says you have to do new evaluation systems. The state passes laws that says you have to track students. We have to do those things, and yet the state says there's no dollars that we're going to give you to do it. That's very, very frustrating. At least the governor has come out with a plan to try to reward schools for performance. I hope it gets funded this year. I met with the governor this last week. I was very grateful that she met with me one-on-one. I met with the state budget director this last week. Very grateful for that, being able to meet with them one-on-one. And they are rolling out a new plan that is hopefully going to recognize schools for the performance they're doing for students, because we need to do that. We've got to get dollars back to the schools, back to the teachers, to thank them for the job they're doing. This isn't an easy job, and people don't come here to get rich, but they come here to make a difference. And I believe in Scottsdale schools, our teachers are making a difference, and I'm proud of that. But I'm also frustrated that we've got to try to make sure these things happen with what we have, and that's tough. So you'll see on the agenda this evening that it's been recommended the governing board approve a high school grading policy and provide direction to administration. I want to apologize. Those 3 bullet points on there were bullet points from my discussion, and we aren't going to really do that recommendation. I'm going to be giving a recommendation as soon as we're done with this presentation, but first I'm going to ask Dr. Kyle Ross to come up and share with the governing board what our high school gradebook and synergy looks like. I asked him and Tony Huara over the weekend, and they were busy again. I know people don't like answering the phone for me when I call on the weekends because I'm thinking things and they're responding. But they built a demonstration classroom for us so that you can see what it is in Gradebook, what it takes to make some of these changes so that we can understand all of that as we give direction tonight so that we can move forward. So I'm gonna ask Kyle to provide that guidance and demonstration to you, and then from there, I will move forward with my recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to give you this demonstration tonight. As Dr. Peterson said, we did create a demonstration gradebook over the weekend. And this is not in our live Synergy database. This is in a training database so that I can make changes to it and demonstrate some of the hot topics from recently. So we have this fake class. It is an English 1 class. And what I did is I just put in a couple of checks for understanding and a couple of assessments. And obviously this is not as robust as an actual English 1 gradebook would be, and I just put a couple in here just to demonstrate how the gradebook works. So we have 4 students, and the 4 students represent 4 different types of students. The first student, Harley, represents a student who has done very well on all the checks for understanding, but he has struggled on the assessments. The second student, Felix, has done poorly on the checks for understanding, but has done well on the assessments. The third student, Buffy, has done okay on the checks for understanding, has done well, has done pretty well on everything except she has done well on everything. The final student, Samantha, has done well on everything except for the most recent assessment, which is an essay, and she had perfect points on everything up until that point. She got a 75 out of 100 on the final draft of an essay, and as a result, her grade is 88.6%. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a snapshot here of their current scores, and we'll just keep that off to the side. So I want to show you how these grades are calculated. So for high school teachers, these category weights are set for them, and they are locked so that teachers cannot make changes to these values, and that was a change for this year. So prior to this year, the teachers via the department chairs had decided, at least for this course, that the final exam for English 1 would count as 10% of the semester grade. And the remaining 90% would be split between assessment and checks for understanding. So we have heard often recently from my colleagues that maybe the 80-20% split is not appropriate now that we have seen it in action. So I want to first point out that when we say 80-20, when we say 80-20, things like this, the 80-20 isn't actually 80% of the semester grade, it's 80% of the 90% of the semester grade. So you can see that here, that assessment does not count for 80% of the semester grade, it actually counts for 72% of the semester grade. So to look back at our picture here, we can see how these 4 students performed with this distribution of weights. So we had a 78%, an 87, 91, and 88. So some of the discussion recently has been around, is 80-20 the appropriate split for that 90% of the semester grade? So I just want to demonstrate what it would look like then if we used a different weighting, and that being 70-30%. So I'll make assessment 70% of the 90%, which is actually 63. And then checks for understanding will be 27. Okay, so we can look back at the gradebook now and see how it has affected the grades, and I'll pull up the previous grades. So we can see that Harley, his grade went slightly up. Felix went down. Buffy stayed the same, and Samantha went up. So by changing it from 70% to 30%, what we learn is that it does not affect all students in the same way. Some students go up, some students go down, some students stay the same, and in complete honesty, I had no idea that was going to happen when I put in these values. That's just the way it turned out. So, again, this is just a snapshot of what it looks like if we change that value from 70% or 80-20 to 70-30, which we absolutely can. In my position as Director of Instructional Technology, we can set this up however the grading committee and the department chairs and the teachers, however they decide that it should be set up. So at this point, when we're doing something new, we have a big change that's obviously affecting the entire district. It is extremely appropriate for us to take a step back and look at what we're doing and say, okay, these are the percentages that we decided on before having done it. Now that we have done it for a quarter and a half, let's take a look at it and see if they need to be adjusted. So if they do need to be adjusted, we absolutely can do that, and we can make those changes here at the district level. Something else that I'd like to show you, and this is new, it hasn't been distributed to teachers yet other than at Desert Mountain High School. This is a spreadsheet that was developed by Desert Mountain teachers that also helps to show how making changes to the different category weighting can affect the quarter grade and the semester grade. And it can also help teachers to decide how many points they should have within their individual categories and how that would affect the overall grade. So this is in draft right now, and we'll be making some final adjustments to it and providing this for all teachers to help them plan out their grade books for the second semester. And you should have a copy of this, and you can play with those green values. So that is how the grade book works and how it can work. And again, this is all locked right now, and this would be set by us on the back end. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have about the gradebook or Synergy in general.
Board Member Brown.
Just so I'm clear, so if a school or a department decided they wanted to change values, they would have to call you to change those values. There's nothing a school, you can't do that on site.
No, Board Member Brown, at the high school level, those values in the gradebook setup are locked. So it's not a matter of asking my permission or anything like that. The department chairs or the teachers or whatever process you recommend, they would decide on the appropriate values, and then somebody from my department would update the values, and then that would happen automatically for all.
So we would facilitate their changes.
Yes, sir.
You know, I just got to point out right now, though, something on Synergy. Now, you've heard me maybe crank on Synergy a little bit here and there. Well, there's a byproduct that I think needs to be mentioned at this point. Over the last year or so, we've asked for data. Could you give me that data? What's it? And in the past, give me about 6 months. We'll get that wrapped up for you. But now, people sitting in front of us go, just a sec, and they pull that up. And you go, why is that? Well, it's because of Synergy. Synergy has allowed us to pull up the data and provide that as a tool. It may be a pain in the tuchus, but the data is wonderful. So I just thought I'd point that out. That's about it for me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Board Member Sneed.
Thank you for that presentation. That helps us very easily see, and it also answers one of my questions from the feedback that we've been getting between teachers and parents. I've been very confused because some of them say that we're lowering the standards and we're making it too easy, and some of them are saying you're ruining my child's chance to get into MIT or Harvard. And I'm wondering, where's the disconnect here? And so by showing that it can go up or down, I guess it depends on what kind of learner you are, what kind of studier you are, that can make the difference there.
Well, and it also makes a difference, Board Member Sneed, within the gradebook, how the teacher sets up the weighting of the checks for understanding or assessments. So within this gradebook, I'm going to filter it down to assessments only. So now we're just looking at the assessments, and as the teacher, I have decided that the essay assessment is worth 100 points, and the essay first draft is worth 50, and that this quiz is worth 25 points. Now, that may or may not be realistic to a current English teacher is assigning for those types of assessments. That's just what I did for the demonstration here. However, teachers do have the autonomy within their gradebook to assign, to do their own weighting within that category. So if an English teacher wants to make essays be the most important thing in his or her class, they can do that by assigning more points to that individual assessment.
And can't they also affect a student's grade in some areas by how many assignments they have and how they weight them within that total percentage?
Yes. Yes, so teachers do still have control over their gradebook.
Okay, and I guess part of what I was seeing too is that there's a lot of frustration coming out in some of the letters that we're getting that are all over the board, from override money to synergy, you know, and just some frustration with all the new stuff that's coming out. But my understanding is that the old easy gradebook, that each license was on a separate computer and that it wasn't centralized. Is that right? And that it couldn't be updated. Each one had to be updated individually or something?
That's correct. They were locally installed on individual computers, and the data was stored on that individual computer unless the teacher backed it up to the H drive, to the cloud.
I think sometimes, especially when technology seems to be seamless, we get used to one thing, where there's kind of resistance to change, and we don't understand some of the back-end benefits to changing the system, and it's hard in the beginning, but after you get going, I think there are a lot of benefits to it.
And not that this should be the sole indicator of why we use Synergy, but we should also point out that it did not cost us more money to activate the gradebook. We were already using Synergy as our student information system. Adding the gradebook and the class websites did not take us up to the jumbo package. It was included in what we were already paying.
Kyle, I have a question. On setting the mix between assessment and checks for understanding, I'm going to say geographically, for lack of a better term, and by that I mean site, department, content area. We hear these terms thrown. What's the lowest level where that can be set?
Well, you mean the smallest group that would have their own?
Yes.
Currently, the most detailed settings that we have are in our world language department, where they have different values for the final exam by grade level.
Not currently. What's the system capable of?
Oh, there's not a limit in terms of how many we can have.
So, I'm not proposing anything. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the flexibility of this tool. Go down to the level of Psych, English, 10th grade, regulars, and honors. Where honors, 10th grade, English at a high school would have a different mix than regulars, 10th grade, English at the same high school.
The tool is capable of doing that.
Thank you. Board Member Jackson.
Dr. Ross, thank you. Apparently you worked over the long weekend to get this together first, so thank you for that. I have a question about this Desert Mountain High School spreadsheet that you showed us. Is that tool new?
It's not a new tool. We have, as you may know, we have a distributed leadership system where we have a liaison from each campus that we call the Synergy Liaison, and they come to about 3 meetings each semester to get updates from us and to help us spread information about Synergy. And our liaison at Desert Mountain, Josh Pantier, working with another teacher, Sheriff Bezemeyer, and possibly some other teachers. I apologize to anybody else who worked on it, whose names I don't know. They worked on this to help their colleagues at Desert Mountain understand the new grading system, and well, okay, now everything is looped together into one big category of checks for understanding. How many points should I have in there in order for it to do what I think it should do? So they developed this tool just to be used internally at Desert Mountain, and then we asked him if he could share it with the rest of the district.
So as far as you know, this tool's been pretty effective at helping teachers at Desert Mountain.
As far as
implementing this new grading policy.
Yes, sir. As far as I know.
And this is going to be rolled out to the other high schools. Is that the plan? It just seems like it could go a long way to helping teachers with this process. And I don't know, but I mean, how would a teacher use this real quickly? You don't have to spend too much time, but I guess my first question is the plan for this to move out to all the high schools? So, because it looks like a pretty effective tool.
Well, yeah, this would just be a resource that teachers
can
use,
right.
Especially if we are going to consider making any changes to the weighting. If there's a committee that does that, or department chairs, or whomever, they can use this tool to play around with the values and see what the effects are. Yeah. So we can see here, so let's say that this is a sample student with 800 out of 1100 points in checks for understanding and 700 out of 900 for assessment. We can see that his semester grade ends up being a 77.89%. For this particular student, if we change these values to the 70-30 model instead of the 80-20. Can
I ask you a quick question while you're doing that?
Of course.
Part of the reason I'm asking this is, as we're all here on the governing board, I'm not hearing, personally have not heard much out of the Desert Mountain community for or against on the new grading policy. It's been, some other high schools have been very adamant, very vocal, and I was wondering if this tool was part of the reason, if things are maybe going a little smoother at Desert Mountain. I don't know that for a fact, but possibly this tool is helping with the implementation of the new grading policy up at Desert Mountain High School. I'm asking, is that in fact the case?
That's a possibility that the tool helps them, yes. So I changed the values from 70% to 80-20 to 70-30, and this student's semester grade went down 0.4%. So it was 0.4% change. So whatever committee talks about and discusses any changes can use this to see what the overall effect might be. And then the teacher could also use it to look back on the semester or look forward to the upcoming semester and see what kind of point distribution they might have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board Member Perleberg.
I just have a little clarification on that question. This calculation model, when was it created and provided to teachers at Desert Mountain?
I don't know the exact date, but it was very early in the school year.
It was very early. I guess to comment on George's question, I do hesitate very much to say that one school necessarily had issues, others had none. I do think there has been input, and it may be different, and as we've seen with the calculations, they can go up, they can go down, they can be different. We've seen improvement. Each school has had some anomalies, I think, and I can't verify that or clarify, but I could say from input I've received that that really is the case, so thank you.
Okay, thank you
for
the demonstration.
Thank you, Kyle. I think that was valuable to help give a foundation as to what the tool can do. And again, the tool can be wide open if that's what the governing board chooses. I just passed out to you a recommendation that I have developed earlier today. I had emailed it to you, but I'd just like to read you the two items that I have put together as my recommendation. That is, number one, teachers have the professional discretion to work with students to be successful, and students have the ability in accordance with the high school planning guide to appeal their grade. Students have always had the ability in the high school planning guide to appeal their grade, so I think it's important we state that if students do have a concern. But the first part of this is teachers have the professional discretion to work with students to be successful. It is something that, again, I want to reinforce what I believe we've always been able to do, and teachers do have that classroom discretion. If students are truly working hard and something just happens and a test goes bad, teachers should have, and in my opinion do have the ability to say, let's make that up. Let's take a different exam, show me that you've understood, and we will replace that grade. I think that's important. And also I want to be very respectful of our junior and senior students that we've heard from parents regarding high stakes and making sure that they are well positioned to be able to go to their colleges. And so that's my reason for that number one recommendation. My second recommendation is a little more definitive, and it's going to take a little bit of work in order to make happen, but that is we refine the grading policy by having department chairs talk with their departments and then meet by content area to develop revised category weightings and final exam weightings as necessary. This revised grading policy would be effective for second semester of the 2013-14 school year. So again, I'd like to empower our staff, empower our departments to be able to work together, to be able to determine what is best, and then collectively, so that we do have some consistency, develop those parameters that then we can put in the system. Again, the system, and I want to make sure people understand, the system really cannot be modified until we finish this semester's grades. So we have to finish this semester's grades. Teachers need to get the grades in the system, and then we need to close this year's system in order to move to next semester. So we would need to be doing that work over the break once teachers have their deadline of putting grades in, cut that off, move forward, and rebuild the system, which whatever weights and things determined from the department chairs working together and with their departments. So those are my two recommendations that I would like to give forth to the board. And again, as administration, we're looking for guidance. We want to do this properly, and we want to make sure that we are moving in the direction that the board is wanting us to move in.
Okay. I know you have questions. This would be or directed, I believe, to Dr. Peterson, and we'll let him direct beyond that. If that's okay.
You bet.
Okay. Board Member Perlberg.
Well, first, I do want to understand a lot better on this recommendation as far as specifically teachers having the professional discretion to work with students. To define that, what does that mean in their classroom? You know, after tonight's meeting, tomorrow morning, what specifically does that mean? Where does your recommendation lead to?
Thank you, Madam President, Board Member Perleberg, and I'm probably going to ask Mitch and Karen to come up to the microphone because I think you two will be helping us feel some of this as we go through this discussion. Again, to me, this means that, just as I use the example, teachers want our students to be successful. We want our students to be successful. So to empower our teachers to have the ability to make a change as they see fit in order to help a student be successful. So give them that discretion, because I've heard from some teachers saying, well, we're locked in, we can't make anything, we can't change, and I don't want that to occur. I want a teacher who's recognizing students for doing work to be able to have the ability and the support if they need to work with a student to be able to do that, and that's what that recommendation is about. And I don't know, Mitch or Karen, if you want to add anything to that?
Yes, good evening, Board President, and I'm very grateful that we're having this conversation in an open format. I'd love to have more of our teachers here this evening so they could share with you some of them that already are exercising that autonomy to, we have lots of good conversations going on where they're monitoring, okay, doing what Kyle has done, and they did that before with Easy Grade Pro 2. That's not a new thing, it's just a new systems that we're working within. So we have lots of good conversations happening among content area specialists already, campus to campus. making adjustments. How much do I count for an essay? Do I offer a redo, retake on that essay to make sure that we're doing right by kids to show mastery of learning? So I think we have some of that up and going now. Teachers having that autonomy, and I think we have to celebrate that and continue to message what that looks like. What does that look like if I have the autonomy in the gradebook? Given these parameters, how do I move this around? How do I make that work within what I do that's right in my classroom? Because we've got some demonstrations that are happening that are really solid right now, and I think we just have to get our colleagues talking and sharing about how that looks and how that's working, what the successes are there.
Well, I don't know if I have anything to add to that other than, again, I would, as Dr. Peterson alluded to, those opportunities with those kids, that when we see a kid that's in trouble, we reach out and we allow them that opportunity to make up that single score that may have been detrimental or along those lines. But I agree with Dr. Benson, our teachers are making the adjustments within. They have incredible autonomy within those categories to weight as they see appropriate for their specific class.
It's just confusing. I'm going to jump in real quick, just because I need to clarify. Are these recommendations, Dr. Peterson, for both middle school and high school, just high school?
Thank you, Madam President. I've geared this right now just to high school. To be honest, I have heard very, very little. I've only had, I think, 2 emails regarding middle school. I've talked to all of our middle school principals personally, and they've all said, matter of fact, I met again today with Cheryl Redner, and she said, we're good. We're
The
okay.
reason I asked is
So
because
it's high
brought
school.
Karen up, so I was just trying to
Yeah,
understand.
it's high school. Well,
On
high
behalf
school,
of middle school?
no, she's been working with the department chairs.
with our department chairs.
Okay.
So they'd be an integral part of that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, Board Member Brown and then Board Member Smith.
Just a bit of clarification. So, we're looking at our juniors and seniors, which has been a concern. Here's my buddy wants to go to MIT. And we're in this semester. Now, I don't want him to carry over a goofy grade in the next semester. Will that be reviewed and a hard look at those grades before we end this semester grades? Are those grades supposed to?
Great question, Board Member Brown. Yes, it will. First and foremost, the professional discretion I'd like to be able to go right now with. The second item would be for next semester. Again, students have always and will continue to have the ability to appeal their grade. That's in the high school planning guide. There's the ability to do that, so that will take place. But we will ask our principals, who are our trusted educational leaders at our sites, to make sure they reach out and work with our teachers in case there is a concern like that. Again, if we have students on that track, I think they have a pretty good idea where they are, and they're not going to be shy about it.
And I guess also, so for the test anxiety, which we've heard about, so we're going to trust that something will take place when we sense that a student that's a great student just has test anxiety. We're going to do something to make sure that's right, because we're not concerned about grades here. We're concerned about, do you know the stuff?
Our teachers, I trust them. They've said that they are working with students and they're going to take care of them. I trust that they will do that.
Good for me.
Board Member Sneed.
Can we talk about what, I'm also hearing a lot about test anxiety, and as a 7th grader, I remember going to a little cohort to the counselor's office of, it was all girls, that all had test anxiety, and it was really a matter of, we knew the material, but for some reason when it came time to test, we didn't do as well as we had expected, and we got help and worked through that. So I'm hoping that, our counselors will understand that. But I think part of it is in the message of what is an assessment. I mean, there are many forms of assessment, and the students aren't being given a grade. They're not being tricked into anything. This is a way for the teacher to not only assess what has the student learned and at what level, but also how have they taught. And as a former classroom teacher, that would be really important to me to know, what did I teach well? Do I need to do something different? So somewhere along the line, assessment became test. And I know that there are many forms of assessing a student's learning, and they shouldn't all cause anxiety. help with the different forms?
Well, I think you're right. If we've jumped to the conclusion that all tests, objective multiple choice tests, and there's high stakes on that for that kid to perform, is exclusively assessment. But if you look within the guidelines that were provided to our teachers, within the assessment category, there's examples of, there's not a litany of them, but there's examples of portfolio, essay, these pieces that are also really demonstrations of knowledge and what the student has learned. I think also a piece that is a change this year is the running or cumulative total of our grades. As we see kids move now into week 12 and week 13, and that cumulative grade begins to build, that does diminish the one single test in terms of impact. And I think that might alleviate some of that anxiety with our students.
No, thank you for that. The other thing is, and I think maybe the message has been the wrong thing, that homework is demonstrative of what you've learned. I mean, homework is practice. And I think our students need to learn that, because by the time they get to college, they're gonna have to do practice. They're gonna have to find out, does it take me 3 times to read a chapter? Do I have to answer the questions twice? What do I need to do to learn? And it might be very simple for me, or it might be very difficult. And so I'm not sure that it's a disservice that I'm hearing from parents to have homework, for us to begin to look at homework as practice, so that this is how we're learning. This is one step in how we learn, not what do we know. And one of the, you know, that's just my opinion. You don't really have to answer that, but one of the things that we heard from people coming to the microphone tonight was, why do we fix something that isn't broken? Well, one of our main initiatives is to make sure that we have more students that are ready for real college learning. If we go back to our previous board, there were examples of students that got a scholarship, maybe through athletics or something like that. They gained that scholarship, and then when it was time for them to take exams to get into the college, they couldn't pass the exams. So they might have been getting the grades, but they didn't know the material. And so that scholarship went to waste. And another student that maybe did know the material and would have been college ready didn't get the scholarship. So there were a lot of different things that went into the thought process of trying to make it more uniform. Not that anybody wants to tie anybody's hands, but I have one other anecdote that's personal enough that it's firsthand knowledge, and that was the difference between what they learn and what grade they get. One of my children was given an assignment to analyze the President's State of the Union address. And this was in an honors class, and my child did that, and I'm trying not to give away who it was. My child did that and turned it in, and I know that that child spent an hour doing it, turned it in, and got a 0 because it wasn't typed. I tried to understand what the teacher was thinking at the time, and you didn't follow directions, you get the 0. 2 days later, my child was given an opportunity to go to an athletic event because that teacher was a coach and could get extra credit for attending the athletic event. And that is, all of us as board members, or at least the previous board, had heard things like this. So it isn't just Kleenex coming in. We want assessment and grades to really reflect where the students are. Are they college and career ready? The whole nation is going to that. And whether it's fair to change or not, it's a moot point. I mean, honestly, we have to get them there. And if they're not ready for college, it's on us. So,
Board Member C, can I respond to a couple things that you brought up in your questions and comments? A couple things. I really first want to celebrate the leadership that's happening on the part of our high school principals, on our department chairs, and some of our teacher leaders who have engaged in great conversations about what an assessment is, because at the end of the day, our assessments include what we think are the most important things that our kids can do, and that is not just in the form of a test. So it's very significant that we continue those conversations, and I think the learning that has happened in the first 9 weeks, remembering what we have in running total, So we've got the whole semester versus that snapshot, 40%, just, you know, we took it at the end of the 9 weeks, regardless of how well you were doing. We have the running total. That was actually recommended by math teachers a year ago, our math teachers saying it's a far more fair way of assessing what our kids do. And to respond to the challenge about homework, if we're assigning meaningful homework, and a lot of our teachers are, that should be in preparation for and practice for doing better on an assessment. So if I'm doing that homework, even though there's not a lot of point value to it, and I'm participating in that coursework, I should be performing better on an assessment because I'm engaging in meaningful practice to get ready for whatever those big demonstrations are for learning. And I'm gonna celebrate, we've got teachers that are responding to test anxiety, I think, in ways that are remarkable right now. There's a department at, I am the mother of a junior, and I try very hard not to bring my child's experiences to light, but I'm the mother of a junior in our district as well. And I want to celebrate one of the departments on the Chaparral campus and how they've responded to test anxiety, and that's the math department. Those teachers have worked collectively to make small little assessments, lots of times 5 at a time. How are we doing? That's an assessment. Do you really know what we're doing? And so it's not overwhelming at all for the students. They're looking at, do they have an understanding where we're at? That's a big demonstration of where we're at and the learning for the week or the learning for 10 days. And so huge kudos to that department for taking a look at that, not making it a giant thing, you know, that kids are concerned about, but small little, big demonstrations of learning on the part of their kids to be monitoring and looking for mastery. So kudos to that department for working together. It's very similar experience of what we're having across that department on that campus.
I'd like to celebrate the high school planning, high school planning guide committee too. Yeah, that too, sorry. But our grading committee subcommittee, they've done fabulous work. And I think board member Sneed, the conversations have mirrored exactly what you just said. Those are difficult questions in terms of trying to come up with percentages that truly reflect then student learning. And we were, you know, all over the place in terms of some people feeling that it should be solely assessment, but yet, you know, realizing that intrinsic value of homework isn't always with our children, and that we need to do something that rewards or instills the ethic of completing work and demonstrating that I am practicing and that this is a check for understanding. So those conversations within that committee very much mirrored the same sentiments that you shared with us tonight.
Questions from board members? I have a few. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead. No.
I tried really hard to just stay focused on application and not get too philosophical here or a bigger picture idea. My concern is that I feel there's kind of a disconnect between, you know, where we see our teachers heading in their understanding and their application of these tools. I mean, obviously, the calculation tools that have been recently created, I think all those are great. The discussions that are happening, we know that's great. Everyone across the board tells us that how teachers are looking at assessment, of what their students really know, that these are good things. I can't help feeling that this would all be so much more wonderful if our policy were being laid down next school year and that we weren't in real time, because I do feel, hearing you speak about the discussions that are happening now, that's wonderful, but there's also a disconnect between just how many teachers are feeling comfortable with this new policy, are fully either understanding it, or how much time they have actually had to sit down with their peers and their colleagues and their fellow teachers, their PLCs, their department chairs. And while that's the goal that those discussions happen, and it's ideal and great, how much time in this real-time application year that we're having right now has that actually been a reality? And I mean, I'd love you to talk more about that. I mean, obviously, I don't think we could say we've been at a night since last May, that those discussions have had an ideal amount of time to really work out application challenges, philosophical questions. Where at this time do you really see all of our teachers across all our campuses.
Well, I think in terms of providing that time, there was brief opportunity in terms of the training provided and PLC conversation in May. Albeit, until the rubber hits the road, we really don't have the opportunity to really live those conversations. Our principals and our teachers have utilized 2 of the early release dates or a combination of those 2 to provide for some PLC time. I can't speak to what they have structured within their day aside from that time to directly speak to it. I'm sure those conversations take place day in and day out around lunch or planning periods that teachers might have. I don't know if the conversation would be any different a year from now once we implemented and we saw what guidelines look like once in the classroom. And I think we might be revisiting some of those same, or having the same conversation. It was not piloted, we didn't roll out with a cohort. There's difficulties with that because of mixed grades and mixed levels. But again, I was working with a committee that came forward with what they had seen as best practices. That in my understanding of working with the committee, these are not things that are unusual with many of our teachers, and that these are changes that we can work with and implement with fidelity given the time we have.
I think we've got 2 of the 3 persons in the room that developed a series of modules. I think they're still here. They are back in the room. We developed a series of modules, elementary, middle, and high school last year, and in April, May, having our teachers participate in those by content area teams during PLC time, etc. And so those conversations started then. I think the rubber hit the road the first time in May when we asked both our middle school and our high school teachers to start to craft their syllabi for this year, reflective of what they learned in the modules and reflective of the new guidelines. And that was significant for both middle and high school. I think that's the first time you get real application of what you're learning, and it's going to impact what we're doing for the following year. But well-crafted modules, thank you. We've got Stacey and Diane back in the room, spent hours and hours and hours in creating that professional development for our teachers.
Board Member Sneed.
I guess I didn't understand how the rollout was going to happen. Back in March, we approved the overall grading policy. Personally, when I look through the grading policy, it doesn't say anything about what procedures are going to happen within that policy. Policy is what we determine. In my mind, procedures are what the committee and the administration and the teachers, the PLCs, whatever, what they determine. So I'm having a little trouble approving any kind of a grading policy when I don't see a policy in front of me. I see guidelines. And I'm just wondering if part of what we're hearing from the community, from parents and teachers, and has more to do with the way it was communicated and the way it was rolled out. Because I am, as Board Member Jackson mentioned, I haven't gotten to answer all of the correspondence yet, but I have printed it all out. I've made notes, and it is heavily from one particular learning community. And I mean, you can't expect that it's all going to be implemented exactly the same first time, easy rollout. So I think that there are hiccups, but I'm having a little trouble separating the entire grading policy and then what the timeline is for elementary, middle, and high school, and then how it's communicated and how it's rolled out. Help me with what this timeline is going to be. Yeah, I read what was in the committee's stuff, but there's no connection to the policy that we actually approved last year. What we're talking about right now, there's connection, of course, but it's not policy. Did he
evening, Madam President, members of the board, Marty and Nina, and Dr. Peterson. The policy that was approved on April 16th was in reference to honor roll and then the frequency of progress reports. That was the policy piece. Then there was an approval on April 16th for the recommendations of the grading committee to move forward with guidelines for grading. So there was not a hard policy related to the recommendations. It was just those would provide the guidelines for our grade, for how we determine grades. Specifically at the high school, the recommendation was how we determine grades, and that was the conversation around weighting at no more than 80% for assessment, no less than 20% for checks for understanding, a running total that we would accept late work, but it would be consistent across content level and course, and that there would be no extra credit. Those were the 4 recommendations for high school for determining grades.
Okay, and then the real details, the nitty-gritty part, was supposed to be determined by PLCs.
At the high school level, it was determined by department chairs. So the approval happened on April 16th. We went to department chairs on May 1st. May 1st, they came together, they said, this has been approved. We need to identify which percentages are going to be attached to the weighting of the final exam, checks for understanding, as well as an assessment. And that came from our department chairs. Then we began the training on May 8th during our last early release day of the school year. And maybe muddying up this a bit is on March 19th, there was a presentation with an update to the governing board, and at that time, feedback was given to tighten up the recommendation for late work, reviews, and retakes, a concern about teacher workload, and the need for communication to all stakeholders. Then on April 2nd, we brought it back to provide the reviewed recommendations on April 2nd, then it was voted on April 16th. So that's the timeline of what you're looking for, specific to board conversation in a public forum.
That helps me. I guess I wasn't aware that there was going to be a different rollout from elementary to middle to high school. Am I right there, or has elementary already made their adjustments?
We had the recommendation that was brought to the governing board beginning in March with the revision on April 2nd was a K-12 system of proficiency. So K-5 was a focus on standard-based reporting and standard-based grading system. And at the middle level, it was the determination of how we determine grades, what extra credit would look like, and so on. Different transition for our middle school than a set of recommendations for our high school. So we had 3 distinct recommendations from 3 different subcommittees based on the unique nature of the developmental nature of the grade levels.
So just for my understanding, Pat, has this work already been done at the elementary levels?
We have had a standard-based report card in some of our schools and some of our grade levels using many different kinds of standard-based report cards for over 5 years. This was more, the radical changes, quite honestly, are at the elementary level. That we have standards-based day-to-day grading, the standards-based reporting of student learning, and that we have a consistent report card for all of our elementary schools other than Cheyenne.
And does this align with college and career readiness standards?
Absolutely,
all the way.
K-12.
So, and I know going back a little bit when people are questioning me, saying, you know, we're not broken, we're doing fine, why are we going through this? Well, we have identified that 40% of our students that go to college and even the 4-year colleges have to have remediation, and parents are a little bit surprised at that. It can affect their 4-year scholarships. If they can't get the work done in 4 years, then their last year of school is not paid for, and so parents get hit with that. So I do think that it was something that we needed to address, and my recollection is then we decided that along with the national standards that we were going to align our graduation standards with being ready for college and career, and then articulate down. And so yes, the standards are harder, and I guess we should expect that, but that's something that our board has been calling for. Have higher standards and more authentic assessment that truly demonstrates competency at each level. So maybe we have, I guess as a board, I'm wondering if I shouldn't take responsibility for having pushed things through without a pilot before. and created this sense of urgency that it has to be done right away. But on the other hand, I think the overall policy and the direction, which is what I think we should be talking about, hasn't changed. And I guess I'm talking to other board members because this is our only chance to talk. So.
Board Member Jackson.
This has been a very difficult issue for me. I've struggled mightily with this because I'm hearing a lot of impassioned arguments about students struggling and teachers struggling, and it's been a heart-wrenching thing to hear. But I wanted to mirror what Board Member Sneed said. I don't believe that comments, I personally don't agree with the comments that things were, why fix it, it's not broken. The fact is, we needed to do a better job, in my opinion, of determining mastery of content and making sure our students are prepared, just like Mrs. Sneed said, when they graduate from our district. And I believe in this policy, and I believe that it was the right thing to do, and it's tough. And implementation of it, possibly there were some mistakes made there for sure. And I agree with Mrs. Sneed. The board certainly needs to take responsibility for that. I also agree that we have some phenomenal teachers out there that feel, once again, that they have been dictates from administration. And I understand that sympathy or that feeling. And I was reading Dr. Peterson's recommendations here. They seem to me to be a very reasonable accommodation to give more authority on campus, give teachers, department chairs, give them some more authority on campus to make some refinements. But the overall grading policy, I think, is sound, and it is more stringent, and it's tough, and but that's no reason to. I've never agreed with the comments and emails I've read that this was a giant mistake. I disagree. I think, in fact, the results are going to bear out quite the opposite given time. That doesn't mean it's not difficult right now. It's very difficult, I get that. But if we are graduating students that are not prepared, really ultimately prepared, or think they're better prepared than they truly are for college, and then I don't think we're doing anybody I don't believe we're doing a good, the right service to our students. So anyway, that's all I would say. Thank you.
Board Member Brown, and then back to Perlberg.
The board is responsible. We have asked for things over the years. Previous board members brought up extra credit. I think it was brought up years ago. Everybody knows Denny Brown's easy. You want to get in his class because you certainly don't want to be in Miss Perleberg's class because she is tough. Well, that's just not right. That's not doing a service to any child out there. We brought that up. We asked for changes. We asked for 2.0. Well, I don't know if there's any mystery to this, but when you raise the bar and you ask for rigor, it's more work for everybody. It's more work for a teacher, it's more work for a student, it's more work for a parent. Rigor means work. Now we've asked, well, I should go back for a second. I have a student in mind, change schools within the district. I knew the student ever since they were itty bitty. Well, my gosh, student goes, I changed schools. I'm not ready. I was not ready for any of this. I was not prepared. That's not fair. That's not fair for us to provide that or to hurt that student that way. We need continuity. We need consistency. We need to respect teachers. My fear was twofold. One, for juniors and seniors. I just didn't want to get them wrapped up and then and hurt them. I can't use words I've used in the past. I have to watch my words. I guess that was my biggest fear. But the other thing was, hold it, are we jamming this? Are we just jamming this? And we being usins. Is district jamming this down a teacher's throat and saying, yeah, I know, but you do it this way? Well, that doesn't feel right either. That does not show respect to the teacher, to the department chairs, to the principals. We need to, one size has never fit all in Scottsdale. Never will. But there's a fairness aspect to this that we have to acknowledge. I feel it's fair to let a principal, the department chairs, and their teachers figure it out. Make it fair. Make it fair for the student is where we got to go. But, you know, I respect everybody in this district. And I'll tell you, when we got an A after those budget talks, that renewed my respect. Because that took huevos on the part of all of our teachers, of all of our principals, and all of our administration. Now, at this point, we've got past last Tuesday. I'm watching my birds. We are moving to a time of, it's just not going to be easy. I want to decompress this district and prepare us to move forward in a productive way. But always with one thing in mind. It's for the kids. So I'll leave it at that.
Board Member Perliver?
Well, I agree with a whole lot of that, absolutely. How it's going to actually translate into our decisions tonight, I still have a lot of big questions. I do see this policy, and I did that in the spring as a work in progress. Especially elementary, we've all set that aside. I think that train is speeding on, and it looks great, and I hope when those first report cards come out, everyone's like, gosh, this makes sense. I love it, because yeah, we're moving along. Middle school, issues here and there, but you're right. High school, it's in my mind, such a big work in progress. And I think everyone is right. This board, we have a huge responsibility with regards to this policy and how it's currently affecting our kids, because there are a lot of questions that when the rubber hit the road, to use all of your educators' language, when that hit the pavement, there were just simply questions that I did not think about in April. I was not, I mean, I can use the excuse I was 4 months into a term, but the reality is bigger questions have come up. And just like on our sites, with implementation has raised questions, issues, a need to modify. It so has, I think, the implementation of this raised questions for our board that in the very, very near future, we do need to ask. And yes, we have standardized testing. Yes, we have a lot of realities that when I was a student, we didn't have. But we have to take a hard look, especially as the realities of this grading policy are unfolding. What does that mean for our teachers and our site leaders, the autonomy that they have? Obviously, when I look at our classrooms and I see the innovation and the creativity and the relationships our teachers have directly with our students, our site leaders, I don't think that's something we can give up for the sake of, yes, we have to take standardized tests. Yes, you know, we have all these other things. I think we should be able to have both. How do we do that? Those are big questions, and our district and our board has to face them. So the question now in my mind is, as we look in this work in progress and as all the questions that we're hoping to answer in discussions, what do we do for our students, for our teachers, for our sites right now that makes this implementation fair, easier, and gives them the time that I have repeatedly heard over and over that's what everyone, the sites, our teachers, our parents, our students need. How do we, to fix synergy, to give the guidance, and how do we get that information to our teachers as absolutely quickly as possible to make this year productive and meaningful under the goals and vision of this policy.
Anyone else have comments, questions? I'm going to take some time. I have a few questions, and I'm going to make some comments and address some things that have been mentioned by my colleagues here tonight. I agree, actually, with I think it was Dr. Corliss, who said the radical changes were at the elementary level. They absolutely were at the elementary level. But elementary isn't as high stakes as a high school and high school GPAs. It also had the fortune to have a multi-year rollout. So what we've done is we took our most high stakes level, high school, and we slammed it through, and the board by all means owns that. Mastery of content was brought up this evening as something we all need to achieve towards, strive towards. But yet I heard, I think all 5 principals last Thursday say that they did not know what that means. What does mastery of content mean? I never heard that question answered. So think about that, because I'll move back to that in a second. I also heard that the results will bear out. Well, I asked the question on Thursday as well, what school district, show me a school district in this country that has put forward the grading policy we've put forward, and show me what their results are. Show me that their results are better than ours. On one occasion, I've been told there is no school district that has the same policy that we're putting forward. I don't know if the results will bear out. I just don't know. We are piloting something. To come back to the anecdote that was used about the senior that graduated and lost his college scholarship. What is our high school, what's required to graduate, what GPA to graduate out of our high school?
Employees earn 22 credits.
Okay, so what's the lowest GPA that a student could graduate with?
Well, conceivably.
1.0. I wish Cliff were here. I don't think he's here tonight. He's my NCAA guy. But what's required in the NCAA to maintain your scholarship and play in Division I? 2.5. So maybe what we ought to be talking about is raising our graduation requirements. That might have helped that student. I don't know. That's a philosophical question to throw out there. We talked a little bit tonight about, I heard Mitch talk about the role of administration. You know, I see the role of administration to support our principals, our department chairs, our teachers, to help them help our students be successful. Somewhere along the way, we're in this paradigm of what we can do to you versus what can we do for you. And that needs to change. If we can make that paradigm shift and view ourselves as a support function, including the board, throw ourselves in that too, I think that will take us a long way down the road. So I want to come back to what Board Member Sneed said about where's the policy question, because as I read this tonight, Item 2 says the revised grading policy would be effective for the second semester. So is this action item, if we're going to revise the policy, wouldn't that revised policy require an approval or disapproval? And maybe the question is we continue this, and I'm going to ask Dr. Peterson on the timing, because what is the timing of sending this back to the department chairs with the content areas, coming up with something, and again, it feels rushed, and I feel like I just articulated why rushing isn't good. We're there today. But what was the timing, and did you envision that the board would get another bite at this apple?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It's my understanding that this coming week, we do have a high school department chair meeting.
So it's actually December 4th.
Yeah, December 4th. So one of our goals was to have the department chairs begin now talking with all of their teachers and then bring that information to the department chair meeting on December 4th so that we could have this decided, and then we would bring it to the governing board in December.
And then will the department chairs and the content areas be given parameters and guidelines to work within, or will they be given a clean slate to begin those discussions?
However you would like us to do it, we could do it either way.
Are you envisioning that the department chair content area recommendations would be consistent across all sites, or could they vary by site?
I believe they could vary by site. I would like to see content areas overall be consistent, but if in fact we would vary by site, then we would bring that to the board for consideration. I would hope, and what I've heard in talking to content area folks, that content areas would be broken out, but we would have consistency from school to school within that content area. So again, we need to have that conversation.
And then I know, because I've been in many of the meetings with you, along with some of the board members, I know, this is a question, this is a loaded question, how you've come to this decision. So could you share with the rest of the group how you got to what we're reading on this piece of paper?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. Again, this came with a lot of reflection. I spend a lot of time listening to folks, parents, teachers, principals. I talk to a lot of my colleagues. I spend a lot of time, as a matter of fact, researching. I do a lot of that on my own when I have trouble sleeping at night, worrying about this stuff. So one of the documents that I went after was from Prince George's County, and I talked to Dr. Height, William Height, who is the superintendent there, and it was interesting because Prince George's County is one of the largest school districts in the country, also highly performing, Malcolm Baldrige Award winner, which is huge. They actually have every single course prescriptive by percentage of homework, coursework, assessment. I felt that was too restrictive for where we are, and so I think my goal was to develop some guidelines, develop the framework, and then trust our teachers and our principals to work together to have the flexibility within that framework. That's why I asked Kyle Ross to present that gradebook tonight so that you could get a fun understanding of what teachers can actually do. They can change those parameters within a framework, but we need to have some type of a framework so that we can operate. And so I spent a lot of time with this. I spent a lot of time trying to, one, be fair, listening to the governing board members, making sure that we do not hurt any student, because I want no student to be hurt. We should never be in a school business if we're gonna hurt children. And I gotta tell you, sometimes I'm hurt when I hear comments made by my fellow colleagues about some of our students, because it's like, we're here to help folks. And I don't think they really make those comments understanding how they come out. They say it, but once it's come out, it's like, I really didn't mean that, but people interpret it differently. So we've got to be careful. But I've spent a lot of time on this, and I've spent a lot of time trying to make a good decision that will help kids. And at the end of the day, my guiding principle is, if I would put my child in that environment, would I be comfortable? And if I can answer yes, I will follow it and I will support it. If I say no, I don't feel comfortable having my own children following that guideline or that policy or being in that environment, then I have to say we've got to make a change. And that's got to be my guiding principle. It's always been. My kids are my most precious asset. And the children that are sent to me are our parents' and community's most precious asset. And we have to make sure that we always make those decisions. Would we want our own children in that environment and under that policy? And if we say yes, then we got to be able to support it. We got to be able to do what we got to do to make it work. And that's my overall arching how we came to where we are right now.
Thank you. And as you were speaking, and you know, you looked at Prince George's County, I think Montgomery County's been offered up, and in my own research, many private schools have this 80-20, charter schools have the 80-20, but there's and I can't speak to Prince George, but generally on the East Coast, and definitely within the private schools and charter schools in our backyard that I researched, there's a key difference in that they have lower teacher-student ratios. So they have money. They have more adults around to support their kids to ensure that they will be successful under this very rigorous grading policy. Does that mean that we give up? No, it doesn't, but it's a reality in which we operate, and I think we need to be cognizant of it. I'll go back to Board Member Sneed. You have your
Thank you. I would point out that one of the other school districts very near to us that we do compare with is Peoria, and I've been trying to get a hold of, I know a couple members from Peoria that were on their grading committee. And so I'd like to kind of find out, did they have these same bumps in their rollout? And maybe we can find the difference. Unfortunately, because we had 5 days to do this since last Thursday and changed it from discussion to action, and because the last 5 days were really holiday, I haven't gotten an answer back yet. But I would really like to know. I see that their committee started back in 2002 doing research, and ours just started 2 years ago. But I think an important thing for us as a board member, when we decide things, is to recognize and even to make sure that people understand, to reiterate that this isn't an administrative directive. This comes from a lot of work from people from the committee, and one of the things that I worry about when we disregard committee work is who's going to volunteer to do it in the future, and are we going to get our best and brightest to volunteer for these kind of things, because it's volunteer work. It takes a long time because you have to do it after work, and they're doing the research on their own, and it's usually committed people who volunteer for these things. And if we don't take their recommendations into consideration, I'm not saying we have to do it point blank, but if we don't, what will we lose because of the process in the future? So we need to be aware of that. And honestly, I have heard from across the board, in fact, so many teachers, that it was one of the most thoughtful processes that they have gone through. It wasn't easy. There were times when it was contentious. But it was a very thoughtful process, and they didn't feel like it was top down. So that's in contrast to some of the things that I'm getting as far as emails go. Board Member Brown.
Well, now, mine's just a procedural question, so you kind of action on what? So with the action this evening, just to allow things as recommended by Dr. Peterson to proceed, then with a review in December of the recommendations of department chairs from each school and each area? Is that where we are now?
Let me suggest an approach. Is that we have this, we noticed this tonight as an action item so that we could take action if we chose to do so. We can choose tonight to not take action, but continue the item until the next meeting, at which point we could again take action on the revised grading policy that the department chairs and the content areas will work on between now and then. So that if there's no motion tonight, or if there's a motion with lack of a second, there will be no action to take, and we can.
Or can we move the item from an action item to an information item? Discussion, information discussion.
Well, if there's a revision to the policy, I think we need to take action.
Okay, to that point, if we are going to do it next month, can we actually have a written policy that we're going to be asked to take action on? I just have a little trouble calling this policy when it says refine the grading policy. So our policy is to refine the grading policy. It isn't written in policy language, and I guess I'm having trouble with that.
Well, that kind of brought me back to where I was last April. It was so vague, there were so many holes. I didn't know what we were taking action on at the time, and I was uncomfortable with it. And so I do think that we should have some more definition. The other pieces of information that I think are important to have is, I think we owe it to our principals to define mastery. What does that mean? Let's be very, very clear. What's our goal? And then what are our key performance indicators to determine success? Is it graduation rate? Is it percentage of kids taking ACTs? I don't know what it is. Or AP exams. You know, that's why we pay you guys big dollars. You'll figure that out, and then also demonstrate to me that if we are striving to be Peoria, then show me where, and maybe this is by site, by campus, we're lagging Peoria. Because the very brief data I was given today leads me to wonder, are we really lagging Peoria? It seems to me we're pretty neck and neck. So that's the sales piece of this. That's selling me on the policy. Those are just important items that I've been asking for, and I'm going to ask again.
Madam President and Dr. Peterson, can I get some clarity, because when we go to the department chairs, rather than doing something to them or for them, we really try and aspire to do things with them. And I want to be crystal clear with them that the recommendations that they're being asked to bring back to the board are those specific mostly to weights. We're not looking at the other guidelines, we're really looking at the weights between the assessments and the checks for understanding and the finals. That's really what we're asking our department chairs to tweak, have conversations and make sure we're okay with and bring back to the board in December. Am I clear on that?
Yeah, I guess that's why, how deep do you want to go? Do we want those numbers from each school, from each department? Do we want to know about retakes, redos, late work policy? Because all that comes into play. I mean, how deep, how much information do we want when we say we want to approve this policy? Because it could potentially be 5 areas from each school, right? Or 5 content areas or whatever it is.
And Brother Brown, I think we're trying to promote consistency across the district so that if my student goes to Sora or Chaparral, does not Coronado or Arcadia, we wouldn't have a gross difference in terms of learning expectations and the how much the big demonstrations of learning are, whether or not I have a final and how much we're waiting for homework and things like that too. So I think we're trying to promote that consistency. And
are we going to give them tweak room though?
That's
is Chaparral going to have a? Can they be within a couple doodahs of saguaro? You know, does it have to be? Because one size does not fit all in Scottsdale. I mean,
I think we need to ask our department chairs to have that discussion.
I think schools should have some autonomy. Just some.
It's gotta be within here, whatever within here is. That's my,
Go ahead, did you?
Well, I
don't have a light on, but I'll.
sorry, breaking the rules, gosh. I am still trying so hard to understand, the realities of what our teachers will face. I mean, they've had an end of the semester coming, speeding at us. They're putting grades in right now, they're giving tests, they're doing all that. And yet, obviously, we've had a lot of discussions about how much there's just so many more discussions that we need to have. What do we do? And I'm not quite following on the recommendations. What is the recommendation for teachers from tomorrow till the end of this semester to do? And I fully recognize that a lot of them love 80-20. And we know that, and we know a lot work has already been done, and have no desire to undo the work that our sites leaders and our teachers believe is best practice and it's good. And if they've done that within the grading policy, great. If they've done some work that's more about manipulating the policy, if they've done more work about just making it work, I'm not sure where the best practice is in that necessarily. So what can we do right now tonight as a recommendation to get our teachers and students comfortable that this end of semester grade is going to be what it needs to be? And then where can we have our sites ready for the discussions for next semester?
I've asked Dr. Peterson to weigh in, but as I've tried to think through where do we go from here, the train is clearly out of the station. Going backwards today and the semester we're currently in, I personally believe leads us to more disruption, more confusion. And let me share a story that I heard from a student somewhere along the way. Told his homework was going to count for 10%. Student decided not to do it. Teacher came back, told the whole class, well, I'm going to work with the class now, and that one homework assignment is now I'm going to count it for something more. Well, that student, the rules were changed midstream with the intent of being helpful, but now that student's even worse off than he was to begin with. We've got to stop changing the rules of the game. We've got to let things settle a bit for this semester, is what I think I hear Dr. Peterson saying. And allow those that are closest to the students, the department chairs, the content areas, to come up with a policy that takes us forward that we can then vote to support or vote against in December for the second semester. And I'm hearing that your IT guys can respond over the holidays to whatever is decided and can move forward. That answer?
Well, I guess to a degree, yeah, kind of perceiving that is where we're headed. But again, I guess I'm still looking for exactly how the rest of this semester looks for teachers, Gradebooks in Synergy. Again, I think we can have these talks in this room, and what actually happens on the campus in that English class can be different.
Madam President, Board Member Goldberg, first and foremost, we are in the middle of November. We are basically 4 weeks from looking at getting ready for final exams and those types of things. Teachers and students have a system that they've been working. We need to finish that system for this semester. But as my number one said, give teachers some professional discretion to work with students as they see fit if they need to. And frankly, we've been doing that. I know right now, because I've been told by several students, that my teacher's still doing extra credit. I haven't gone to that teacher or anything else. I've said, let's get through this semester. That's my goal. Then let's let our department chairs honor them. They're selected as department chairs because they are the masters of those areas, to work with their colleagues and then come together as department chairs to collectively make those decisions. And we will bring that back in December for the governing board to either tell us we like that, or no, do something else, and we will keep doing this until we figure out what else we do.
And I appreciate that very much. I can follow that, but I guess one of the questions too is the realities of the time that the department chairs will have with their staff. Are we talking an hour, 2 hours?
I think it's gonna be whatever it takes.
I guess that is the question.
Some may be able,
how long?
some may be able to decide literally in half an hour and go,
I'm sure the math is ready to go right now.
we're good. Others may arm wrestle for days. But we have until December 4th for the department chair meeting, so we know that's our deadline. So whatever folks need to do to meet, talk, discuss, cuss, up till that point, we need to do that.
Well, and I do agree with Mr. Brown that keeping it at a site, at least, since we do have a short time frame to make a decision, at least for next semester, I do agree with that. I think we should keep it site-based, not try necessarily right now. And we've rushed a lot, so let's not make that same mistake. Deal with that across the district issue.
And I
And
think
it's ready,
that's
when we're ready.
I think that's a conversation we need to have in December when we bring back whatever comes out of that committee. I do not want to bias that committee in any way by saying one way or the other. I want them to basically come and bring it to us so that we can then have that discussion and that dialogue.
Board Sneak.
Thank you. I would like to challenge this board that when they think of policy, focus on outcomes and not input so much. If we focus more on what we're trying to achieve overall, which includes not hurting kids, that's in there and it needs to be said. We also don't want to stress out our teachers any more than we have to. But we are, as a board, should be setting expectations for outcomes. And if we start being really prescriptive about the input, then what that really does is tie everybody's hands, because then they have to go through the whole board process in order to change it. And if we see halfway through a semester that what we decide in December, if we get that prescriptive, and then we find out that it is hurting kids or it isn't working, then we have to go through the whole board process to change that. And so I guess I would caution that maybe we can do this on a bigger picture level and not get so prescriptive, and let the professionals take care of that so that they can be more flexible.
I'm going to try to answer your question. I don't know that you've gotten an answer yet. In combining their two pieces of feedback, if your department chairs and content areas can come back on December 4th with, we violently agree on this. This is the first step that we need to take, but we need more time on steps 2, 3, and 4. I personally would be okay with that. I don't want a half-baked plan, nor do I want one that was rushed and uncertain with lots of questions and discontent. And I trust our principals, I trust our department chairs, I trust our content. They're the closest to the kids. So can you work with that kind of guidance? And so there may be some departments that come back with a full-blown, this is our redos, our retakes, our extra credit, our late work, we've got the whole thing figured out. There may be others that can only agree on the mix between assessment and check for understanding. And I'm okay with that.
Madam President, I appreciate that, and I think Dr. Mitch does too, in terms of the clarity of where we need to start, because I think it's you, Board Member Proberg, that said how much time will they have with their departments. We'll shoot out this direction about what they need, what kind of conversations we want them to be having tomorrow, so that they can have conversations in time before December 4th. but we get them for 1 hour when they come in. And so we're going to start the conversation then based on the feedback we're just getting, making sure that we're okay with the checks for understanding and the assessments and the finals, and start with the weighting piece. And like you said, Madam President, we may have some groups that are already there, that they're fine, they don't need any adjustments, and they're all on board, and they may want to start having other conversations based on the feedback and the guidelines that have already been shared by the very hardworking high school committee, so they can continue to tease those out. But I think that's where we need to start first, to make sure we're okay with the weights in the two categories and the finals, and move on from there. So I can anticipate that we'll have that part of the conversation done by December 4th.
Head of my colleagues, where are you on that approach?
Sure.
Sounds good.
And I'll close with, I cannot, no, it's just guidance. It's just guidance right now. There's no policy to vote on. And I just can't impart to you enough of how important it is going to be to me. This is truly a bottom-up approach to this deliverable.
I would love to echo that loudly.
And our board meeting is December 10th, so that will be our target to bring back to you for December 10th.
Can we have it, to the board member Sneed's comment or question earlier, is there any way to get it, if even a couple of days earlier?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
As soon as December 4th is the department chair meeting. As soon as we get done with that decisions are crafted, they will be out to you as soon as possible. And our goal would be, obviously, that Thursday before the board meeting for sure, hopefully the Wednesday.
Have it more clearly delineated for what is actually policy, what is guideline, and what is procedures.
Yes.
One of the things that I've always been told as a board member is the difference is the board says let there be light, and the professionals determine how that's done, if it's, what the wattage is, what kind of a light bulb it is. So I want us to think high level.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel one of the biggest reasons I think I have struggled the last few weeks and lost sleep over this is because what we approved in April was prescriptive. It did lock our teachers in 80/20. I know it was recommendations from the committee, and I cannot reiterate enough how much respect I have for the committee members, for the work they did, and the conversations that they had. I'm sure to some degree the other, how many teachers do we have? 2,600, 1,600? Are jealous of that time and those conversations that they did get to have. It's wonderful. As 30 members and our district as a whole is trying to catch up. So it was very prescriptive. The implementation, to me, raised application issues for our sites. It raised application issues and technical questions, very prescriptive questions. But the reality is, a very prescriptive number was placed on and I obviously feel so compelled that we look at that and assess it and modify it and hear all of our stakeholders' input on that. I'm not eager to change it to another number directly, to say, okay, not 80/20, never mind, 70/30. I'm not eager to do that at all. The discussions are what's key in my mind, the time for those discussions, for them to bring about real change and meaningful change. What also, I guess I do feel to your comment is, with the implementation of this and trying to look back at where we were as a board in April, I think the implementation has raised a lot of big questions for our board that I personally was not thinking of at the time. And so I do agree that we have to take a look at those questions and the culture of these types of policies and where that leaves our district. I do agree, those have to be discussed very quickly. Thank you.
So unless there's any further comment, we will move on to future action. We just decided that this will continue to our next meeting for future action. Are there any requests for future action? Are there any governing board reports? Okay, so we have a work study meeting on November 26th, on December 5th, a study session, and Tuesday, December 10th will be our regular board meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, passes 5-0.